Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Sunday, January 4th, Monday, January 5th, for those of you across the pond and beyond. Welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm so glad you guys could join us this evening. I am your host, TessaTNT, and I hope you had an awesome weekend. And I hope that this week and this new year has been treating you very well. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight on one of our many outlets. You may also find us on Spreaker, Periscope, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Tumblr, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, as well as Podcast Addict. So tonight I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight we will be talking to and getting to know our guest, Mr. Shawn Sellers. So Shawn Sellers is a paranormal researcher and investigator, author, lecturer, and a history enthusiast. In 2006, Shawn founded Southern Paranormal Researchers, SPR for short. He is also the founder and tour guide of Haunted Montgomery Tours, both of which are located in Montgomery, Alabama, where he currently resides with his two sons. He was raised rather unconventionally by his grandmother, who taught him about the spirit world at a young age. He was well known locally for her abilities, and she passed a great amount of her knowledge on to him. In addition to what was taught to him by his grandmother, Shawn was inducted into the world of Freemasonry by his grandfather and uncles, which helped to spur his love of history and tradition. Shawn has dealt with cases across the United States involving ghosts, dark entities, UFOs, cold cases, and other mysteries of the unknown. Hey, Shawn, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being on tonight. I'm so excited to have you.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited about being on your show tonight. Looking forward to it.
So how did you get your start in the paranormal?
You know, it started since we was kids. Since I was a kid, you know, my grandmother, she was half Creek, and she practiced basically old school kind of hoodoo. And the spiritual world and being familiar with that side was always kind of a part of my life growing up. And as a kid, you know, I've always had an interest in the supernatural, the paranormal realm. And we lived near Huntington College, which was famous for having the ghost of the Red Lady. So at night, my friends and I, who now part of my team, David Humphrey and so on, we would get our bicycles and tell our parents we was going to each other's house, and we'd go to Huntington College to look for the ghost on the green of the Red Lady. And then it's something that we kind of carried on as adults and, you know, been doing ever since we was kids. And my grandmother really was the main one that kind of got me into to knowing that there was more out there. And it was just something that was always common to me growing up.
That is awesome. And it's interesting how you were raised by your grandparents. I lost my mom at a very early age. She was killed by a drunk driver. And so I grew up with my grandparents for a while there in Pettigrew, Arkansas. And, oh man, the paranormal experiences I had there on her farm, I don't know if it was like Indian burial ground or what, but there was a lot of stuff going on. Can you tell us a little bit about what your grandmother taught you and some of your very early on experiences?
Sure. You know, she first taught me a lot about using, you know, you see a lot of things with candles and using different altars and different stuff. And she always taught me as a young age, it was basically prayer with props. It was using your thought to create. And sometimes you needed that visual to give you that little bit of extra for your prayers and different things like that. And it helped focus that intent. She taught me a lot about growing up as kids, even as investigators, when you contact certain entities and stuff like that, you could always tell by if they didn't have feet or if their mouth didn't move, they'd talk to you telepathically that they were mimics. They wasn't real. She would tell you different things about conducting cleansings and how you would go about doing the cleansings on the homes. I remember as a kid when she would do readings for people, and we had this glass door, and she had a bell on our fence that would come into the fence, and we would have to clean the glass door, and it would have to be no stains. And she would yell for them to come in, and she would try to trick the people into walking into the glass door. And once they walked into that glass door, they would be embarrassed and they would let their guard down, and it was easier to read.
Right.
And she would always teach me about tricks. Sometimes, you know, like people are automatically guarded, and sometimes you have to do things to get their guard down. And I still remember her doing that to this day when she would talk to people and stuff. And sometimes she might say something extremely like outlandish, but it threw them to the shock to be able to read them from that point on. Um, and it was really strange growing up as a kid, because I thought as a kid it was strange, and now I kind of appreciate it a lot more, because we used to spend time where we couldn't talk. We'd have to almost try to use our thoughts. I know it sounds strange talking about it, but we'd try to talk telepathically and through thoughts. And back in the day, you tell you how old I am, when our phone would ring, I would have to try to guess who it is and use that thought to try to guess who it was. It became a game, and it was something that I kind of carried on, as a kid growing up. Little things about when you feel things come on and you get those goosebumps. You can sing song and whistle, and it helps break the vibrations, and how these things, these energies, and what's out there attaches to you through vibrations and through energy, and be able to how to shed things off, and it was just a lot of basic things like that from childhood all the way up through my years when she was alive, that it was like a constant like a classroom, basically.
That is so awesome. And for those of our listeners that don't know what hoodoo is, can you kind of fill us in on that?
It's basically just a form of folk magic. It's basically with a lot of the Native American beliefs, a lot of the African American, and with the different slaves. But with our background with the Native American, it's basically using a lot of the herbs, a lot of the the different traditions that's passed on. Like, you have the power of the crossroads, little spells that you could have. Like if you got to take a rock from a running stream and you had a wart, you take that rock and you rub it on the wart, and then you take the rock and bury it at the crossroads, the water go away. Little tricks and stuff. But a lot of it is thought and what you would believe. Being able to make different like gree bags and stuff to help you intent of holding on to it. Like, if people used to go gambling in Biloxi, and they'd go by and see my grandmother, and she would make them a bag, and she wouldn't charge them for it. But they would have to, if they won, they would have to bring it back, and they would, and I guarantee you, if they won money, they would bring something back to her, because that intent, and they would know, and they didn't want to go off for them to do it, and that with them not winning, and that was something that that she would do, and that's just some of the many things that she would do. And so basically, it's we're Christians, and you have a faith in God, but at the same time, you also believe in some of the other natural herbs and remedies and stuff from that. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but that's kind of...
Well, yeah, and those are created by God as well, so...
Yes, yes.
It kind of goes hand in hand.
Exactly.
And what tribe, again, did you say that your grandmother was from?
They was Creeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
How did people know how to find her, how to seek her out for help?
I don't know that. It was something like her families was all passed. Her sisters, it was something that I guess was just passed along. And I really don't know how it happened and how they knew, but they come from all walks of life. And it was something that that's just kind of passed around through the years. And she had clientele from all walks of life.
That is super awesome, and that she taught you that. Did she ever teach you how to witch for water? And going past that, did you use that knowledge? Have you ever used dowsing rods after that?
I have. Yes, I've used dowsing rods and so on. And, as kids, you make dowsing rods out of the old wire clothes hangers too. I've done that for my kids playing, making them with the dowsing rods and so on. So, yes, we've done that as well.
And I assume that, all of these things that you learned from your grandmother, you passed on to your sons as well.
Do you know what? I have to some point, but I think there comes a time that you kind of get away from it. But I share a lot of the things that I've learned, and I share a lot of things about her, and I share it with them, on a regular basis. But, I think that when I look back to how things were and everything else, it's just kind of almost like a different time. But I do pass along to them to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think it's very important to do that, to keep certain traditions and such alive and passed on, like you said, through generations. Sometimes for certain things, you wait for a certain age. But I know with a lot of my experiences I had as a child and ways to protect myself, I have passed that on to my children because I want them to know. And I want them to also feel, safe telling me about their experiences and feel comfortable with what's going on, to keep them from closing that door on the paranormal. I want them to be able to build upon their gifts. Do you find that your kids have gifts as well?
my oldest is, it's almost like they split. My oldest has the one side of me that regards to the athletics. Then my youngest is more like me, that's sensitive and interested and into this. And so when I pass it along, I do pass along the traditions. I think traditions are really important, but I think you pass them along to how they can receive it, understand it, and process it at that time. And like my youngest, I can process at a certain level that spiritually that my oldest might not be ready for. And they're basically growing. And I think that my youngest is actually has more, I guess, more ability and opportunities than me right now. And I can see things in him that I used to have. And, even when I go back as a kid, I can remember being open to things. And, I used to remember as a kid, like hearing things scream at me, being woken up at night with the sounds. And my grandmother would say that that's because you didn't have that ability to tune in the sounds of things to try to communicate with you. And I've seen things as my youngest growing up had some of the things happen to him that's happened to me as well, if that makes any sense.
It definitely does. So,
Yeah.
You were talking about your grandmother doing cleansings, and there's so many different ways to do it, and a lot of it, is about your faith and your intent, so on and so forth. How would she cleanse houses, and did she teach you those practices as well?
Yes. She's always taught me how it was taught to me and how I've done it over the years is it depends on your clients and how their belief system. They have to have that belief. They have to have that thought to it. And prayer is imperative. You come through with prayer, the white light. Always a smudge. You ring the bells throughout. We've done different things. We use a straw broom to sweep things out the door. And you go through each room and you smudge it, you ring the bells, do the prayer, the white light, and you have to use your intent and that light to change that energy. And when whatever you cleanse out of the house and that energy, they have that ability to bring it back in there, but you have to cleanse it. Let me correct my thumb. I'm sorry, I'm just sick. Basically, when you come in and you cleanse the house, you have to have them belief in what you're doing. You have to have their energy come in as you cleanse the house and get rid of the negativity. You have to be able to keep it going. And when it comes in, they have to know what allows it to come in and out. Just for the fact, if you have a family that's in a home and they argue and they leave, and that leaves that imprint into the room, into the house, that when you come in and cleanse, you have to tune into that energy and be able to kind of ease that energy out with the cleansing, with the smudging, and so on. And how I've done the cleansings to the point we go in. I do the prayer in every room. I use the sage. I use a white candle with a bowl of water next to it. And I go through each room and you go through the process. We've also used the salt around the house as well. But you just really have to use each case and each home to the different levels.
Yeah, and salt works really well against different entities. And there's different things you can do. And a lot of people don't realize it. Like, you can make a wash with salt and,
Yes.
wash different areas, mop your floor, pour it down your
Yes.
drain, so many different ways to use it to protect yourself. And a lot of people don't think about, the drains and such. You got to cover all your bases. And like you said, have that faith and intent. And it's important for whoever the client is to, like you said, have belief in it, faith in it, and for them to put that forward because they are the master of their own home,
That's
so
right.
they got to
That's
take
correct.
it back.
That's right. And, I forgot about you could use the different mops and stuff and waters and different things to mop your floor and so on. There's tons of things you can do with the cleansing, especially the old school ways.
I just recently read that people use salt against aliens as well. Have you heard that?
I have. A lot of the spiritual warfare has worked with a lot of people that allege alien abductions. Even some of the cases that I've worked over the years with, I've interviewed people that allege being demonically attacked and being abducted by UFOs and those type of entities. They have the exact same symptoms. And the one thing that's worked against them has been almost that spiritual warfare, whether it's prayer or that white light or that vibrational attachment that you have. And that's something that's worked hand in hand. And I have heard that before.
Yeah, I just recently learned that, and it really blew my mind. I was like, wow, that kind of makes sense. I was reading about a case where a man back in the day said he sat and ate they're basically like these little crackers or whatever with holes in
Yeah.
them, and they did research on it, and they found that there was no salt or anything like that in it, so they knew it wasn't from here because we have salt in everything. But they don't use salt, and so that's how they figured out to use salt against aliens. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So what was your earliest paranormal experience?
I've had I've had so many growing up as a kid. I think one of the first ones that kind of I tell you this, one of the first ones that kind of stands out to me was that is my grandmother was was working a case, and I wrote about this in my new book. She's working a case on regards to a family. I didn't know the whole backstory or whatever, and I was asleep. I was asleep in the room, and then I could hear my grandmother in the room, and and then at night when I was a kid, I'd get scared and I'd go lay in the bed with her because you just felt the energy and you knew something was off, and we could hear somebody. I could hear somebody in the linoleum floor walking. And then I could hear my grandmother scream for him to scream out something. She used the tone, the vibration and stuff to change things. And I remember as a boy when I got up one morning, I went around that corner and I saw a boy standing in our kitchen, and it was actually I described the little boy to her, and it was the boy that she was actually working a case for at that time. And that's something that kind of stands out to me ever since, one of the first things that kind of really got to me. And then as I got older, when we used to go to Huntington College and so on, they would be the famous ghost with the red lady that was always that they read Catherine Tucker Wyndham wrote about and so on. But there was also a mist that would come across sometimes late at night that would go down to the green. That was a ghost in the green, and we witnessed that. I think we witnessed that was probably when we was about 14 years old. That was the first time we seen that, and that was some of my earliest experiences.
It's very interesting. I know at my granny's house, I had early experiences before my mom passed, in that household. And my mom was very spiritual. She was able to communicate with spirits. She'd actually, go with her girlfriends up to the cemetery, and they'd hang out and, smoke with these spirits, talk with them, so on and so forth. And that was really, really cool. And, she passed all this down to us as far as our genetics and such. We all have our different gifts, and we're all sensitive. But when she died, it kind of took that spiritual side away from me. And, I don't know, you get this form of PTSD where you have issues going to sleep. And I still to this day have issues going to sleep at night. My bedtime's generally 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Seems to get later and later, especially on weekends. I stay up with my friends and listeners, and we have an after party and such. But did you have any sort of PTSD from your experiences, or were you easily able to accept it and you weren't really fearful of it?
You know what? I think I've always been fearful of it. And, till to this day, I don't sleep much at all. I think sleeping is a struggle. And I think that's a lot of us that's in this field that it becomes a struggle. And as I've gotten older and I've started working these cases, traveling, and doing the stuff we've done, I think the more and more, and I think sometimes I kind of took a break from the field. And I was just going to get away from it. And then I guess this past year or so, I guess almost past year and a half, I'm slowly starting to get back into it again. And it really never leaves you. And I think, it stays with you a lot of the times, and I think it still haunts you. And I think some of the cases and some of the experiences that I have, that it does come back and you don't really ever get rid of it. It kind of leaves a scar on your soul a little bit.
Right. It does. And even, I found during a certain period, I think it was between the age of 8 and 13, I had a little bit of a break, like where nothing happened. You could feel energies and certain things going on, but you'd stay awake and expect something to happen and nothing would happen. Did you find in your life that you did have a break from certain paranormal things, or has your life been pretty active for the most part?
I have never thought about this, but it has been. And what happened, I guess you can say from when I got out of high school until from probably about 18 to about 25, I wasn't anything paranormal. I was basically just being young, living my life. And we had a friend who I wrote about in the book, Eric Henshaw, who was like a brother to me, that he started kind of bringing us back into the paranormal. And he started having these experiences. My grandmother was really close to him, and we was all kind of a family. And it started getting me back involved in it. And then everything started happening again. And he passed away in a car accident, and that's kind of got me kicked off back going again. So I think from about 18 to about 25 is a period that I don't really remember anything standing out. And to be honest, I didn't even have an interest in it. And I kind of pulled away from my grandmother and everybody for that time period. And that took me time to come back.
Did your friend come back in any sense, like in dreams or as an apparition, to communicate to you that he's okay? Anything like that?
Yes, he does, and he's come back several times, and he's always kind of with me. But when he passed away, there's a couple was getting ready to bury him. The funeral's the following day, and I went to bed that night, and when I used to sleep, as a kid, I always slept with my dog in the room because I would feel safer, and my dog would sense things before I would, and I still do that to this day. So I had my dog at the foot of the bed, and the dog Morris stood up, and when he did, I sat up in the bed, and I saw Eric standing in front at the foot of the bed. And Eric said, "I can't believe you lost my knife." We're Masons, and he said, "I can't believe you lost my knife, brother." And then I realized that I lost his knife. I didn't have it. I didn't know where it was. And then he laughed, and he turned and walked back in the bathroom, and he was gone. And I did lose the knife during that time period, and he was there, and that was just kind of his sense of humor. But he's made several appearances, and I feel that he's around a lot of times. And one of the strange things too that kind of bothers me to this day with the work that we've done in this field is that we lost Eric, we lost another one of our team members, James, and we lost Judd. I've lost like 4 team members over the years since we've been doing this work. Yes. And I have that they all come back. They still around several times.
When you go out on investigations and such, because I know you and your friends growing up together are still a team and you're still working on paranormal things, do you feel them on investigations when you go out? Do you get any kind of cues or anything from them?
I do. That I believe the spirit world is always with you. Your love bonds always continue. And they always stay next to you. And it's up to you to acknowledge these signs and stuff. And to be honest, I think sometimes I kind of make sure they're with me, and I kind of bring them along for that protection. And I kind of key into them. But there's been times over the years when you use ghost boxes or shack hacks and different things, that these things come across that to let us know that they're there. And we've had hints of things throughout the years. But there's not many times that we don't go on an investigation and do something, or something don't happen that we don't look at each other and say, "That's James," or "That's Eric," or "That's Judd." That it seems like every time that something happens, that they do come up on every investigation.
It's so good to have friends on the other side to, as you said, protect you when you're out and about and doing these things, because there's so many things that would just love to feast upon us, and it's awesome that you have friends on the other side. It's hard to lose them. For us, it's hard, but for them, it's freeing, and they're still there. Like, their energy and their spirit carries on, and I think free will is not only for the living, but afterlife, and they have that free will to do as they may until Judgment Day. I think Judgment Day is one day where we all have our judgment, and that to me makes sense, because why else will we have spirits, still here?
Absolutely. Love is continual. I absolutely believe that. Definitely.
So do you feel like the dream realm is basically another realm that it's easier for spirits to be able to come through that way?
Yeah, I think that's an easier way to communicate. And I think sometimes it's the best way. If you want answers, if you want to communicate with someone that's passed over, is to ask them to give you a sign in your sleep. Before you go to bed at night, ask them to give you a sign. Ask them to let you know that they're there. Come see you. And a lot of times you can catch yourself before you wake up, right before you go to sleep in that realm, and you can have these interactions and these communications. I've always told clients in the past to keep a notebook by the bed to be able to write notes, and anything come in contact. When you wake up at night, scribble something down on the side. And I think the dream world is a way for us to travel, visit our loved ones, and connect to the spirits on the other side. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it is easier for them to come through that way, because it takes so much energy to appear or to try to communicate. And a lot of times when you get these EVPs and such, like, it's a whisper. And for people like you and I, we can pick that up without having a recording, but it just seems so difficult for them to be able to try to communicate physically in this realm because it's so different for them.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes too, I think we can focus so much on trying to, a lot of times the most paranormal experiences happen and our equipment don't pick it up. And it comes down to our interpretation, how we experience it and everything else. And that's why, as an investigator and a researcher, when you come in, it's really important to document everything that happens, the time, where it's at, what occurred, and your own personal experiences, and try to collect as much evidence as possible. But a lot of times, when something really happens, you don't get a chance to document it, and that's just part of it. And your experiences and how you have it is something that you have to document it, and it goes along with your research.
Yeah, a lot of people write it off. That's not evidence. It's a personal experience. But to me, personal experiences are pretty big, in my book. But as a paranormal researcher, we're trying to gain evidence to prove that this is real. And I have somebody over here in Spreaker, actually in Periscope, who's talking about, how they're imaginary friends and all this other stuff. My mom's not an imaginary friend. And, you know, you'd think that you'd be able to dream about them or whatever anytime you want. But since the age of 5, I've only seen her twice in dreams. Once shortly after she passed, and then again when I think I was 17, she came through the morning of Mother's Day while I was sleeping. First time we had a lengthy conversation, and she told me she was okay and to let everybody know she's okay and everything's going to be okay. But the last time I saw her, she just smiled at me and I couldn't even say anything. I just kept crying and crying, and I actually woke up and I was physically crying. And then I realized it was Mother's Day and I went up to visit her. But it's pretty interesting that you can't just, make dreams happen. You can't just, see somebody. But I know she comes and sees me. And I actually talked to her on a Ouija board. I only used a Ouija board at one time, 2 times in the same night. The first time I asked if I could communicate with her, and it said no. So I was like, screw you, I'm going to go take a shower. I was in MRP in North Carolina at the time, and it was during Hurricane Bonnie. And then I came back, and the Ouija board was still on my rack, and so I was like, okay, I'll try it again. And I didn't even say anything, and it starts slowly moving, and then faster and faster and faster, and it was saying my siblings' names to tell them she loves them, she's okay, everything's going to be okay. And that's where I learned about, she's able to do what she wants when she wants, or be where she wants when she wants, and she's always with us when we need her. And it's just pretty cool how they do have that free will and that ability to be basically in numerous places at one point.
Yeah, you can feel them a lot of times installed you hear a song on the radio and you can just hear that song and you can just feel them there. You can feel their presence. You feel that connection, that energy. And then, I truly believe your loved ones is always just a thought away from you.
So a lot of people, because I was raised as a Christian, I actually visited many different churches, especially when I went to the military. I went to any church that I could just to learn more. And it seems like everybody has a little bit of the truth, but I was taught not to use the Ouija board, not to play D&D, so on and so forth. But a lot of people are saying these days that these other tools that we use during paranormal investigation are just like using a Ouija board. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what they are, but to be honest, a Ouija board is just was always kind of taught to me was as a tool for mediums to hone your skills. And I think any of these things out there that you use is you're dabbling with these things, but you have to take on that spiritual responsibility of doing it. And I think that you do teeter with it, but at the same time, we're investigators. God gives us this free will. He gives us this will to want to explore, to want to see what's out there. And I think that's these devices and these things can help us research and find out what's out there more. And I think as long as we have a firm foundation in God and go forward, I think that it's that these tools is out there for us to use. And I think as long as we practice that spiritual maintenance, with use your prayer, your meditation, know when things are off, get rid of that negative spiritual residue, and practice the spiritual maintenance. I think these tools out there is can be good and bad. But if we're in this field already, we're already crossing that line, if that makes any sense.
So you were talking about using telepathy and such to communicate with your grandmother and everything.
Yeah.
And, I find myself doing things where people are saying things that people are thinking. And when my dad, he's passed as well, when he talks to me, I know it's him, even though when I hear it in my head, it sounds like my voice, but I know it's him. How does that work for you?
You know what, I can, the tone changes. There's different tones. And if that explains, there's this best way I can explain it is like, I have a wavelength that I think and talk. And if something comes to me that's not on my vibrational wave and it's a little bit harsher, I can tell. And I can always tell with my grandmother, if that makes any sense, because hers was already very blunt and to the point. And then a lot of times you can feel different people's energies, and you kind of can mesh things, and you can get vibes off people when you come in. It's just basically getting in tune. You know how you always come at a certain vibrational state, and I was always taught is that sometimes it's like a motor. You have to lower it down, and you can rev it back up to tune in. And that's the same thing as you're receiving messages and different things like that. It's just controlling that spiritual motor and realizing what's on your vibrations and what comes in that's not yours. And her tone was always different.
So earlier you were talking about during a cleansing using a white candle with water next to it. What exactly does the water do? I
always use a white candle with water, and I put salt in it. And a lot of times I believe that the water is just the energy source, and it helps absorb. So you have the white candle with that purity, and that's our thought and prayers, and that thought's connecting to it, and that water's giving its energy. I just like the water, and that's just my personal belief. I like to have the bell that you ring and change, because that's how I was always taught to ring. I know the smudge is important because the smoke from your prayers you go through. And when we go through, normally it would be I would have Hump that would come in. We'd had a pastor that would do the prayers and so on. And I always believed in having that bowl of water and that energy source with that white candle sit next to it. Like when John Edwards would do his readings, he would do that a lot of times. And he said the water would have the bubbles in it. It would take the negativity out of it. And that's something that I've always done. And even to this day, when I burn a white candle, a lot of times, or candles, I like to have a bowl of water next to it. And I might put some salt or some different oils in it as well.
So you're talking about taking a stone from the stream and rubbing it on your wart and such.
Yeah.
Do you guys, did your grandmother teach you to use other stones or crystals or anything like that for protection or other sources?
You know what? I did not use. She did not teach me different things like that. Now she would do the different bone readings and different things like that, different cards and so on. Now using different herbs and things like that. But when it comes to the other stones and stuff, she didn't teach me that. She did not.
And white sage is very important. We use that out here in the Four Corners as well as Palo Santo. But have you ever used sweetgrass for cleansing as well?
I've never used sweetgrass, but I have heard of it. But I've never used that.
Yeah, I've never used it either, but my group, Four Corners Paranormal Investigations, we have many different team members with different backgrounds, and it's very diverse, and a few of them do use the sweetgrass, and I actually have heard of that being used to, I guess, to appease the spirits, especially in native areas.
Yes.
And one of the earliest things that happened in my life, and I don't remember, but my sister does, is we used to play at the foot of this man on the front porch at a house in Boston, Arkansas, and it's down in a little, kind of like a valley, a holler is what they call it. But we'd play at his feet, but he wasn't, like, physically there, he was spiritually there. And I think he might have been a family member or something. But my brother said he went up into the attic once in this particular house, and he found a bunch of tobacco kind of wound up and sweetgrass and things like that. And it makes me wonder if somebody put that there as like some sort of tribute or whatnot. But I do know when we moved out of that house, he got pretty upset. He didn't want us to leave, and it was basically like a little earthquake and stuff inside of this house, and the cupboards were opening and things were being thrown around, and he did not want us to leave. He really enjoyed us being there, and it kind of makes me sad, and I wanted to go back and visit him, but that house actually burned down. So I wonder if he's still a part of the property, I mean, you don't really have to have a structure for spirits to be there, or perhaps he moved after it burnt down. What are your thoughts on that when structures are lost and spirits
I
that
don't.
dwell there, do they move on or do they just hang out?
I think they can just hang out. I think they have free will. I think they can move. I don't really believe a lot of times spirits are always locked down to one location, but I think they a lot of times they do stay at that location. And just like if you have a house and you investigate it and you go in and they talk about they see a lady that walks down the hallway and walks through the wall and they don't know why and she don't interact with anybody. When you pull out the blueprints, there used to be a door there and it's just a residual type of energy. I think a lot of times that they do stay to these locations, and I think a lot of the residual energy is there, but I don't think they're connected to the structures at all. And I think that comes about with a lot of the properties nowadays because the structures and everything else changed. And when you really look into it, there's other places, like there was a plantation that we did investigations and so on, and we had an opportunity to go to do the investigation because they was contacted because there was a subdivision that came in right behind it. And behind the subdivision, there was 122 slave graves that the homes was built over. And we had a chance to go in and we saw the papers and we had a chance to do the investigations there at that location for several years. And a lot of times it's just those locations that don't have anything to do with the buildings or anything like that.
And it's very interesting. A lot of people have said along these lines that I don't know why my house is haunted. It's a brand new house. We just built it. But there are things that can be attached to the property.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times, like you might have somebody that lives into a house. Let's say you move into a house and this family don't have any activity, and this family moves out, and the next family move in, and they start having the activity. And but I think a lot of times to these homes, it's the type of energy that people bring to the house that might fire off the activity. And I think what's happening is that some homes that families just don't charge it, and you bring in another family, they might charge the activity in the house, where there could be some alcohol abuse, it could be some type of addiction, something like that could kind of trigger an effect and cause the activity to worsen in the house, which I've found over the years.
And it's interesting as well that different entities and spirits can actually cause chaos within your house, like contention and fights and so on and so forth, to feed off of that negative energy.
Yeah, and a lot of times when that happens, everybody's affected differently. They all have different type of activity, different things. Everybody's has different experiences, and it's always there's an entrance point, and it begins to grow, and it worsens and worsens and worsens until it gets out of hand. And you have to have that point to see where it caused it and where it affects, and when it comes in these homes, it's almost like it's just like almost like a virus where the energy just keeps feeding on people and it's breaking them down mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Yeah, it can cause divorce, drug abuse, alcoholism, so many different things, and they just love
it. Yes, absolutely.
Do you find that being gifted and your children being gifted, you guys are kind of like a beacon and spirits are attracted to your house because they know that you can see or feel or hear them?
I think so. I think things are always around. I can feel things often, and I think you have to be aware of the things out there. You can tell when things are off. You have to be aware of how your animals interact. It's important to keep keep up your spiritual maintenance, to keep up the cleansing of your own house, and you have to be aware of things. And you can tell when things are off and things are about, and you have to just kind of look for the signs and sense these things. And I think you can pick up on it. But it happens often.
It's funny because I'm not afraid to go out and help people and investigate their homes, but when it comes to my house, I don't do investigations here like I do other places. I know different entities come in and out. Sometimes they're stuck here just waiting to get help. I've done cleansings here, but I haven't used my tools as far as like I would somewhere else.
No.
Do you keep from doing that as well to kind of protect you and your family?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when it's your home, I've never had to do anything like that in my house. I'm not going to. It comes down to being aware, practicing that spiritual maintenance, and keeping that keeping that door closed at the right time, because you're going to have that natural things that you're in tune to things where you're going to have these experiences. You can have these things come in and out of your house, and if you work certain cases, you don't have that connection where they can come to you. But at the same time, you have to keep that separated from your life and to what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And earlier you were talking about the woman in red. In our house, back in Salem Springs, Arkansas, the house that we lived in, and my mother, she was actually hit by the drunk driver, like not even a mile away from our house. But a week or so before she passed, we saw a woman in, well, I saw a woman in black. I heard the footsteps at first, and I was, staring out the doorway, having as she's sleeping, and I was watching the lights from our clock. I don't know if you remember back in the day, they have these clocks with like water flowing, and the lights would just shine and bounce off the walls in our hallway. And so I'm just sitting out there watching the lights bounce off the hallway, and all of a sudden I hear these footsteps, and I'm like, well, that's weird. I thought everybody was in bed, and it sounded like high heel shoes. So I thought it was my mother. Perhaps like I blinked and she went past the doorway or something. I'm trying to rationalize this at the age of 5. And all of a sudden, it's getting closer and closer and closer, and I'm calling out for my mom, Mama, Mom. And the very last time I said Mom, she appeared in my doorway. And she was about 6 inches off the ground, and she was wearing a long lace black dress with a veil over her face, and she was wearing like the 1800s high heel sort of like high heel shoes. And she stopped right there in the doorway. She slowly turned and looked at me, and then turned and looked back down the hallway, and then I heard her go into my mother's room. So for the longest time I thought, this woman has something to do with my mother's death. But my sister had an encounter with this spirit as well, where she'd appeared in her room, and she's sitting there listening to her Michael Jackson record, and she's like, "Who are you? What are you doing in my room?" And she said, "Close your window." And we lived off a bend of a highway. And she's like, "What? Who are you? What are you doing here?" And she said, "Close and lock your window." And she continued to try to argue with her, because she's a hard-headed, preteen. And she got this really stern voice, and she said, "Close and lock your window." So she turned around, closed and locked her window, and then turned back around, and the lady was gone. But in the floor, even though her shoes weren't touching the floor, there were burn patterns of the bottom of her shoe in the wood floor. So for the longest time I thought, she was bad. She had something to do with my mom dying. But then I realized later on, she was probably trying to protect my mom. And my mom would say things about, hooded people being around her bed. And she knew when she was going to die, how she was going to die. She even asked her dad in a letter, when she came out here to Colorado, she sent him a letter saying what was going to happen. And once she got back, they had a really big argument. And he told her she shouldn't talk like that, but she's like, "Dad, it's true. It's going to happen. Would you please just help me? I want my funeral to be like this." So he did help her do that. But what exactly is the story behind the woman in the red dress?
Well, it's actually the red lady. She basically she moved to she came from up north, and she got sent to Huntington College, which was an all females college here in Montgomery, and she was down here, and she always wore red. And her being a young lady from up north, she didn't have any friends. They constantly made fun of her, kind of picked on her a little bit. And then she ended up thought she made friends with one lady finally. And the girl ended up tricking her somehow. So the lady in red went back to her dorm, and she ended up cutting her wrist and committing suicide. When her friend came back to the room, they found her in her room dead. And ever since then, they would see the lady in red would come out the room, go down the steps, and go across Huntington College and go out across the green. And so she's been reported to the years and so on throughout. But actually, in the 70s, there was a kid there at Huntington College when it was a male and female college. He actually committed suicide on the green, and he's been seen sitting in the trees at night. In weird places, almost just kind of like a trickster throughout campus. And we know, like I said, we've actually seen the mist that moved across the green as well. So he's actually seen more than the lady in red. But it's a really, that's one of the most popular stories of the lady in red.
So she's kind of like a trickster. Does she move things around? as well as appear?
No, she just basically appears. It's the ghost on the green, the guy that committed. There's another murder. Well, a guy committed suicide in the '70s. He shot himself there on the green. He's like the trickster. He's seen in trees at night, whistling at ladies. He's seen just messing with everybody. He's all over campus, and he's more like the trickster there at Huntington College. And we've actually witnessed the mist of him coming across. The lady in red, if you really research the story and so on. The stories conflicted because when Huntington College was actually in Tuskegee, they said that's originally where she actually committed suicide. The ghost moved from Tuskegee to Montgomery, but I never really verified that. But Catherine Tucker Wyndham's books, she stated that it happened there in Montgomery. But even today, if you go to the college, in the room that she supposedly committed suicide, they've got a red cardboard box of her standing looking out the window.
That's so interesting. And it's interesting how they can move. I wonder if she moved with someone from one place to another, or if she just did it on her own.
A lot of times with these hauntings and stuff like that, if people can create things with thought, and if she was there, if they've seen her, and if she actually did that when it was at Tuskegee, and people talked about the red lady and brought her there, she could actually move along with thoughts. It's like things are constantly created, with thoughts, like the Slender Man and different things like that. If you tell these stories and tell these legends over and over and over, people start believing it, and that energy will start breathing life to them. It's like a thought form. And then you start having these instances and start having these experiences from there.
Yeah, and someone was saying in the chat room, not only can places be haunted, but people can be haunted, which is very true.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that happens more times than not, that people are haunted. It's the people. Yeah.
It's very interesting and insane. But it does happen.
Yes, definitely.
So what would you do for a person who is haunted?
I think that's one of the cool things about our field, is that I think that if we really get to all the nuts and the bolts about this, our field is for a lot of us that's been haunted and been the kind of the outcast that had these experiences, that this field gives us an opportunity to come together and kind of fit in to a certain extent, to try to find explanations of who we are and why we are the way we are. Somebody that we can share our weird experiences and our stories, and actually have somebody that can listen to them and not judge them. And I think that's really one of the cool things about our field and what we're doing. And I think that the biggest thing that people that are haunted and have these experiences and everything else is finding somebody that's just going to listen to them, somebody that's not going to judge them, somebody that's going to accept their stories, and somebody that's going to kind of not think they're crazy, not throw judgment, and to go from there. And I think that's one of the things that I think that our field, you hear so much about the drama and different things like that, but that's one of the good things and the blessings that our field has offered. It's gave an outing for a lot of people to have a place of normalcy and a place that they can come and not be the outcast. And I think that's really a blessing, that what we're doing in our field right now.
It is so important to have someone out there that does listen to you and doesn't judge or ridicule you. And because sometimes one person may be affected by this haunting, but other people aren't until, generally months or, sometime down the road. And then they realize that person's not crazy. It really is happening. But it's so important that we are here for them and able to give them a voice and somewhere to speak and feel safe.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're here for. And I think a lot of times the cases that we have, and sometimes the people that contact us, they just want somebody to talk to, somebody to share their experiences, somebody to listen. And I think it's important for us to document what we hear and what happens, and document these stories and see what we can connect. And that's just part of it. We're just basically reporting what's coming across what we do in this field. And I think that's just part of it as we move forward. It's just a process in this field.
It really is a process. So when you guys go and do investigations, do you do this free of charge?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we always do it free of charge. We do a lot of historical places. We do private investigations, and we've done fundraisers for historical locations as well. We used to do things for Bonta Vista, which is a plantation throw-on, and we've done things at the courthouse with the facing the window up in North Alabama. I am so sorry I'm off my game tonight. This flu is killing me. But we've always done things on these historical locations and different stuff, and we never charge for anything.
And I know you are there in the South, which is considered the Bible Belt. Do you get a lot of judgment and ridicule from people telling you these aren't really, ghosts, they're demons, and what you're doing is wrong?
We do, but at the same time, as they get done telling us that, as soon as we walk away from the crowd, they'll whisper to us, "Hey, let me tell you about this. Let me share my experience with you." And I think it's really shunned upon, and a lot of people look down on you. But at the same time, people have these answers. People are having these experiences, and they want answers. And I think that's one of the things that we have to accept that. You're having these experiences. We need to try to find these answers. We need to share our experiences and open up. And I think that we're ridiculed a lot, but I think there's a lot of them that come to us and ask our opinions at the same time as well.
Well, I think it's awesome what you guys are doing and the help you're putting out there. And, I was excited to tell my Aunt Vicky, because she's really close to my mom, and, I'm sure she knew my mom's gifts, so on and so forth. But when I told her about what I do and how I help people not only on this side but the other, I was amazed that she was telling me, what makes you think God's going to protect you when you're communing with demons, so on and so forth. And, I feel like it's more of a sin if you have a gift like this and you are able to communicate with spirits and such. You should build upon that gift instead of putting it on a shelf and just, letting dust collect on it.
Yeah, I think God gives you these gifts for a reason. I think God is not. I think so many people that puts limits on God, and God's limitless. And I think that He gives us these gifts, He gives us these abilities, and He gives us these experiences to share and grow. And I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the experiences that for us to really do that is to really experience His love and His joy and what He wants from us. And it's part of it. I think that you have to acknowledge that there's really something going on out there, and there's really a battle of good and evil, and there's really something going on. If you ignore that, if you turn away, that you're really going to miss everything that's happening right now. And I think it's so important is to wake up and acknowledge what's happening and saying that God don't make mistakes. He gives you these gifts, He gives you these interests for a reason, and that you should explore these things.
Yeah, and I think that, we experienced these things as a kid. We didn't ask for these things to happen to us, it's a part of who we are, our genetic makeup, so on and so forth. And it's important for us to use it. Like, we wouldn't have these gifts if we weren't supposed to use it.
Exactly. And I think that, I think a lot of times I would love to trade in my childhood and love to trade a lot of the things that I've done. And
right?
I've ran from it my entire life, and I'm still uncomfortable talking about it, but I make myself get out and talk about it. And, and I do a better job talking about it when I'm feel better. I'm so sorry, but I think that you have to get out of that comfort zone, and you have to realize that God don't make these mistakes. This is who we're supposed to be, and we got to grasp that and go forward and have that confidence and get out of that places. Because I know, like for me, I never feel like you fit in. You always feel like the oddball, but you you have something to offer. You have these experiences. This is what you do, and you have to make yourself get out of that comfort zone to go forward, because either you're growing or dying in life, and God wants us to continue to grow, and that's what it's all about.
Indeed. I couldn't agree with you more. But I'm so grateful for you guys and what you're doing. We're going to go to our first musical break, and on this break we have Mr. Brick Casey, who is an artist from Boston, Massachusetts, and his songs are Main Thing and Mr. Cellman, kind of like Mr. Telephone Man back in the day. And then the next artist we have is Hosni Brox, who is originally from Jamaica, but he's also in the Bronx of New York City, and he travels back and forth from Jamaica to the Bronx. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this musical break.
I like it when you pop it, drop it, swing. Nah, don't stop it, doing that thing. Go, go, girl, keep doing that thing. I just wanna make you my main thing. Keep going, baby, now don't you stop that. Vanilla chocolate flavor, you're the only one that I'm searching for. You the one for me and I can't complain. You sunshine anytime it rain. Not around then I might go insane. I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that. Keep going, baby, now don't you stop that. Honey, you're so sweet, I can't ignore. Thinking about you both more and more, making it pop and drop and swing. I could be the king and you my queen. Yeah, they look good, but you I'm saying, I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Who's them dudes in the back with the black on? Crew deep, don't sleep or slack on. Come to the money, honey, I'ma get a stack on. Excuse me, ma, can I get my Mac on? To the left, throw it to the right. Do it like you wanna do it to me all night. From the block, kid know how to act hard. Like brick house, women with a fat backyard. In the club with me and my man's illin' that. In the back door with me and my man chillin' that. I'm on the floor, I'm like, damn, she killin' that. It's going down, no cop around, feelin' that. I'm fly, I'm a guy that'll get him. Player like me, need two of you with him. Call you a lollipop and I wanna lick you. Number one, my top choice of pick. Come give it to me, ma. Go, go, girl. Now don't stop. Oh, no, girl. Break it down for me. Get it gone. Can you keep it going? On and on and on. Now give it to me, ma. Go, go, girl. Now don't stop. Oh, no, girl. Hey, break it down for me. Get it gone. Cause you got it going on and on and on. Can't deny the that you too fly. Anytime that I look you in the eye, a phenomenon that I can't explain. Like the things you're doing to my brain. You don't only wanna take away my pain. I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Can't stop thinking about how you move and all the things that I'ma do to you. True, this might be a little bit strange. Don't care if I don't even know your name. That's why I wanna tell you this simple and plain. I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Who's them chicks all thick with the pumps on? Lumps in the front, back with the bumps on. Not a cat hoping that he get his humps on. I'm way beyond with them other chumps on. Sweet enough to eat and he might bite you. Wanna make love to you, I don't wanna fight you. Nobody like you, not a one like you. When you come around, no telling what he might do. Right now in the club, who the dawn? Don't a man that got it going on later on. I could tell by the dancing, you digging this song. You can tell I've been digging you all night long. And I love to be digging in you all night long. Party right here, hardy all night. Let's flex it to the coat check, exit to the Lexus, Nexus, triple exit. Come on, give it to me, ma. Go, go, girl. Now don't stop. Oh, no, girl. Break it down for me. Get it gone. Can you keep it going? On and on and on. Now give it to me, ma. Go, go, girl. Now don't stop. Oh, no, girl. Hey, break it down for me. Get it gone. Cause you got it going on and on and on. I like it when you pop it, drop it, swing. Now don't stop it, doing that thing. Go, go, girl, keep doing that thing. I just wanna make you my main thing. You pop it, drop it, swing. Now don't stop it, doing that thing. Go, go, girl, keep doing that thing. I just wanna make you my main thing. Vanilla chocolate flavored, you're the only one that I'm searching for. You the one for me and I can't complain. You sunshine anytime it rain. Not around then I might go insane. I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Honey, you so sweet I can't ignore. Thinking about you both more and more, making it pop and drop and swing. I could be the king and you my queen. Yeah, they look good, but you I'm saying, I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Can't deny that you too fly. Anytime that I look you in the eye, a phenomenon that I can't explain. Like the things you're doing to my brain. You don't only wanna take away my pain. I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Can't stop thinking about how you move and all the things that I'ma do to you. True, this might be a little bit strange. Don't care if I don't even know your name. That's why I wanna tell you this simple and plain. I just wanna make you my main thing. I like it when you pop that, drop that, keep going, baby. Now don't you stop that. Hello? I'm trying to call my baby, but it's poor reception, cause she ain't picking up. Hello? Hello? Listen, Mr. Operator. I've been up all day and I'm trying to dial my baby's number. See, it only rings straight to the machine. 617. Now I know something must be wrong with this cell phone, cause my baby knows she wouldn't hang up on me. So tell me what's going on. Now see, most of the time phone only ring twice. How you doing, boo? Cool, how's your date? Nice. Now she ain't picking up, plus a text her. Put it to your plane, she's the one to get next to. It's not just the way, it's all day with affection. I'm hoping this detection is poor reception. Straight to the machine, mean it's like clicking my car, get connected quick. I'm saying, hey, Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see there's something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, working. And the second time I call, I'm like, little bit hurting. But the third time I call, I'm like, going berserk. And now half a day gone, can't get her on the horn. Usually in the morning, maybe it's something wrong. I mean, she wouldn't take this long to call back. See, be tight like that, she's supposed to be mine. So could you please try it one more time? Hey, Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see there's something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, but get click every time. Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see there's something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, but get click every time. Why she ain't picking up, yo? For some reason, it's like she ain't home. Just wanna get my baby on the phone. Now I know that she's there all alone. So can you please hook up my cellular phone? Hey, Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see there's something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, but get click every time. Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, but get click every time. Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see there's something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, but get click every time. Mr. Cellular Phone Man, I see there's something wrong with my line. I try to dial my baby's number, but get click every time. Why she ain't picking up, yo? Why she ain't picking up, yo?
Why, Babylon, you want our fire? come from Jah. Dance, dance around this place, Rasta. Dance, dance, it's our chance to unite and chant the word. People in love, people in love, people in love, people in love. Yeah, humanity, protect humanity. We have to save people from poverty. We don't want your frustration. We don't want your ambush, Babylon.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for listening tonight. Did you guys notice anything about Hosni Bronx as far as his band? He actually has original bandmates from Bob Marley's band, so that's pretty cool. Welcome back, Shawn. It's been great having you. I'm so sorry you're sick, but you're doing great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So can you tell us about some of your original investigations with your brothers there?
Yeah, sure. We've investigated. We've investigated all over. A lot of places in Alabama, New Orleans. We've been to the Charleston City Jail. One of my favorite places. New Orleans is a place that we spent a lot of time growing up as kids, and we've investigated the 1891 house there in New Orleans, which is a really cool location. The Jackson Hotel, the Bourbon Orleans Hotel. We had an opportunity to investigate. There was a house on Esplanade Street where a gentleman, he's actually a producer, and he had a house in Chicago and one in Los Angeles, and he bought one in New Orleans. Because New Orleans, they got a really good tax breaks to film shows. So him and his wife, they bought a house there on Esplanade, and they was there, and they was doing the renovations to the house, and they was asleep, and they had a newborn baby. And as they laid in bed asleep, they started hearing somebody sing to the baby on the baby monitor. And their first inkling was that they thought that somebody's broken into the house, was there. So the husband, snuck got out of the room, made his way down the hallway, and the wife stayed in the bed. She was terrified, and she could hear the lady kept singing to the baby. He busts into the bedroom, and nobody's in there. And then the singing stops immediately. She leaves. We had a chance to spend a whole week in his house, and we did not have one paranormal activity happen. We did all types of experiments, investigations. Nothing happened, but that was their experience. And we had a chance to investigate it, and that's just one of those things. You never know what happens, and it's just one of those cities that things kind of come about. I had a chance to investigate Waverly Hills. That's a famous place, and we've been all over doing different locations, everything else, and but New Orleans is one of my favorite places to investigate.
I actually got to go there this year around Halloween, so we got to see the crew of Boo, and we were actually there for our friend Chad Dillard. Chad and Alta wrote a book called Or Abducted in the French Quarter, so we went there and he was showing us around and the whole path that they took that night for her birthday when they were abducted. And it's amazing, like, the energy all over the place there. And that was right after the Hard Rock hotel that they were building had collapsed, and they were trying to demolish it as we were there, and there was a whole holdup with it, and it didn't quite demolish correctly. But, I mean, the energy is just amazing.
Oh, yes, it is. It's one of those cities that, I've been going down there since I was a kid. Our friend Lord Chaz does the vampire tours down there. So what happened when they was abducted? What happened with your friends? I hadn't heard about that book.
They actually went out for her birthday, and it was a really crazy night as far as things happening. People weren't in the bars. Like, they were like, where is everybody? Because there's always people there, Yeah. So they go from bar to bar to bar until they end up at... something Charlie's. I'm trying to remember the exact name, but it's towards the end of the quarter there, and it's one of the original bars in New Orleans. And they went outside, and Alta wasn't feeling well. She started feeling really weird, and she was sitting on the stoop, and then all of a sudden they saw this brilliant light appear around the corner, so they walked around to check it out, and it was this orb of white light. and all of a sudden they were abducted. They call it orb-ducted because it was an alien orb. And it was crazy. Like, okay, so Alta woke up in her bedroom, and Chad's not there, and she's like, where the heck is he? And she goes out, and he's in the living room, and they're trying to figure out how they even got home. They don't even remember doing that, and they're talking back and forth about their missing time, so on and so forth. And as they're talking about it, like, different memories start coming back to them. And Chad was telling us about the different aliens and such, and the structure that they were in, and how, like, there wasn't a wall on one end of it, and he's standing there looking out into the universe, basically, and seeing this ship kind of fly by, and then it comes back, and, you know, they're checking them out, and then Alta said she was, like, on the surface of the moon, and she was on the edge of this crater, and she could see these different bodies kind of piled up on top of each other. And then she turns around and she sees this woman, tall, light-skinned, blonde hair, very beautiful. There's actually a picture of it on the book, and they're communicating telepathically, and, you know, she's telling her she's okay, everything's going to be okay. Their friend that was with them, Crystal is what they call her. I don't think that's her real name, but they used Crystal to protect her real name. And she said she came to behind the wheel of her car in this neighborhood she'd never been in, and she kind of sideswiped a car as she was coming to, and she's like, wow, how the heck did I even get over here? They've done some regression to try to pick up even more memories, but it was quite the experience, and so we were hoping to have an experience there. We didn't, but it was interesting to hear his story and follow the path that he did and the different things that they had encountered. Another thing they encountered in one of the bars was a man in, like, a jet pilot's jacket. You know what I mean? One of those leather jackets. Yeah. And he seemed really out of place and was asking certain questions. And I don't know, they just felt like he wasn't meant to be there, and there was something different about him. But they really had an amazing experience, and they're both very open and gifted. Alta actually does readings, and she's part of a Native American tribe as well. I'm trying to remember which one, but I can't at this point. But really awesome people. When we went down there, we didn't get to meet Alta because she was very sick. I was sick as well, right before I took my plane trip down to Arkansas, and then me and my sister drove down there. So we got to meet Chad, but we didn't get to meet Alta, which was very sad. I really wanted to meet her, but perhaps in the future we'll get to go back down there and see my sister from another mister.
You know, I've had a lot of really unexplained, you know, strange experiences down in New Orleans, you know, over the years and everything. And, you know, when this is one of them I wrote about in the book, when I was a teenager, we was down there, and we was actually on the backside of, if you go like up toward like Pirates Alley, and before you go up through Pirates Alley, and you get back to that main street on the backside. And it was very crowded, like during the Mardi Gras time period. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It's almost kind of haunting, where you have, you know, you have the whole crowd, you had everybody out there, you're walking, and then all of a sudden it's almost like a humming sensation where things are like it's almost like everything starts to shake around you. It's almost like a weird vibrational change, and you see people, but the noise is starting to drown out. And I see somebody, and there was a man standing maybe like 3 feet in front of me, and his back was turned to me. He was completely normal. There was nothing abnormal about him, but I could see him openly, like clearer than anybody else. And he turned and looked at me, and when he opened his mouth, he had shark teeth. And then he did, he turned back away, and then I came back, and he was right back in the crowd again, and he was gone. And, you know, to me, to this day, that was something that's always kind of, you know, that's one of the many, many things. You know, my friends always tell me we're going to write a book about some of the things that's happened to us in New Orleans. And, you know, I have tons of strange, crazy things that's happened to us through the years like that. And I'll share another story that happened to us, and it's similar. You know, when you said abductions and things like that, I've heard stories and stuff, and some of my research and things about people just absolutely just going missing, like loses time, and then wakes up in the middle of like odd places, like in a warehouse. You know, they don't know what happens to them, and they, you know, there's been weird things like that's going on and different things, but. We was at, of all places, Lafitte's Guest House, and that's right there on Bourbon Street. We was doing an investigation when we was there for like several nights. And it was a night where it was me, Hump, and our case manager. I think it was Patty, and another one of our childhood friends, Burnett, was all there. And we was in the room, and it was late. It was later that evening, and all of a sudden, the whole vibrational stuff changed. You could almost feel like the presence of somebody that was in our room. You couldn't see anybody. We could all sense it. And I wouldn't have told the story till you told me that one, so I don't want you to think I'm out there. But this happened. We feel the change. We feel them outside, and then for some reason we decide, so we're going to go outside and see if we see anybody out in the main part. And this is late in the evening. This is right there on Bourbon Street, but at the far end. And as we came outside, it didn't occur to us at any point that we could sense somebody, see like somebody ahead of us, and they would move across the streets from left to right, or we could hear, and sometimes we would hear a tap, like they was tapping like a cane or something on the road, and we started following them. And there was no noise. None of us remember any noise. We don't remember anything else. And we remember we walked all the way down to the Esplanade. We took the right, went all the way up to Royale, and we kept following that. And we don't remember. We talk about this often, and if you ever get them on, we'll share that. We don't remember coming across anybody, hearing any noise. The streets was empty, and we went all the way down to get to where what Jackson Square is, and you got right there in the square. And as right when we got to that main alley part, we had a lady, a transit came up to us, asked us for $1, and we woke up. I mean, we kind of came to, and the city was back alive, and we actually lost like 3 hours, and we don't remember what happened. We don't know. I know it sounds crazy, but we wasn't any noise. We don't remember anything. We just remember following this thing throughout that city, and we ended up losing about 3 hours, and it was right back when they asked us for that $1. And that was up in the morning. It was about like 4 in the morning when that happened, but it was right back to the city and the noises and everything else. And we all shared that experience together.
It's amazing, and I just now remembered what that bar was called. It's called Checkpoint Charlie's.
All right.
So, yeah, that was pretty interesting. And that's where, right outside to the right, and I took pictures of the stoop and everything, and it's actually pretty dirty when we were there. I was like, wow,
yeah.
I wouldn't sit on that. But, there's homeless people and everything going on, and we were giving away our food and stuff to people, just trying to help them out. But, yeah, Checkpoint Charlie's was the bar. But yeah, so much interesting things happening, and it's amazing that you guys did have that experience. Do you have any recollection of what happened during this missing time, and have you guys considered doing some sort of regression?
You know what? I've had 2 missing time instances, and I've thought about it. And we have a friend that actually does that, and I just hadn't done it yet. And to be honest, I'm kind of scared, to be honest. I really don't know if I want to know. Another instance that we had is that we was getting ready to go. Was leaving our house. We was getting ready to go to Natchez, Mississippi to film a episode for this TV show, right? And it was me and Jake and Jeremy, 2 of my team members, and we left Montgomery, and you have to pass the airport heading out going toward Mississippi. And you go to this like a 2-lane road and everything else, and we all remember passing the airport. And then it's 45 minutes before you get to Selma, and that's the next town that you come. And then basically 2 hours later, we get a phone call, and I remember our phone starts to ring, and the phone rings, and we missed 2 hours, and we're sitting there at these train tracks going into Selma, which is that from that time period we've lost basically 2 hours of time. And the interesting thing about that story is that the people that was going to film that show with, one of their members had a loss of time about the exact same time coming to Natchez, Mississippi from their direction. And those instances, the New Orleans one doesn't creep me out as bad as this one, is because I was driving the car, my friends was sitting there, I was driving, and then none of us remembers what happened. We have no clue what happened in those 2 hours. And then something got us to that point to there. You know, I believe in dimensions and different things like that, and that's a lot of the things we encounter and stuff. But to me, something about that time period, it just really, sometimes in this field, you said there's something sinister about it. Things are just off, and that's one of those things that bothers me to this day. And we've talked about doing it, we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I've had different psychics and stuff on my show, and one of them does regressions, and she actually said she'd do one for free on me, but I'm just kind of worried about somebody walking around in my head. You know, she might knock something off or knock something over, and so I'm kind of afraid of doing that, but I could understand how being abducted that you would be afraid of what actually happened.
And, you know, you wonder if you're abducted or if you're actually going through time slips. You know, if you're in different vibrational states and stuff, you're able to slip to these little time slips. And could that kind of be what's happening? And, you know, especially if you have people that work in this field and if you have a lot of people that's sensitive and kind of in that certain in tone, like all in the same vibration, if you're able to go to certain time slips and different things like that. You know, that's kind of... You know, I believe that's where a lot of the crypto stuff, a lot of the UFO phenomena and all that stuff, is that they come through dimensions and they come to these vibrational things. That's why when you have a lot of the Bigfoot sightings, you have UFO sightings. A lot of these things go kind of hand in hand, and I think a lot of times that kind of can explain a lot of the things that we're encountering, what we're coming across.
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad was actually, you know, he'd never had a paranormal experience until he was with my mom. And it's kind of like you were saying earlier, like about, you know, the whole floor plan and everything changing when a house is demolished and another one's built, or a house is burnt down and another one's built. And he saw this man in coveralls climbing up a ladder into the attic, but there wasn't an entrance to the attic there. And there really wasn't a ladder there. It was just like all kind of like an apparition or whatnot. But he really believed in aliens and UFOs, and so I wanted to believe too, but I didn't have an experience until 2012, and it was in my very own backyard. I witnessed an orb out there, an alien orb, and it looked like a ball of glass with liquid fire flowing through it in a clockwise fashion.
Yeah.
And it was just moving at a slow walking pace down my back fence, and you know, I'm trying to fidget with my phone and get it open and trying to get it to camera, but I can't get it to work. So next best thing, I'm like, hey, you guys, you got to come over and check this out. And so my daughters came over and they saw the same thing I saw, but my husband, when he looked at it, he said it looked like a glass orb with a really large bat that was glowing, like flapping its wings at a very slow rate of speed. Previous to that, just up the road on the Rainbow Road, my kids were coming back from the motorcycle rally, and my daughters are telling me about this light in the sky that's following us, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, it's back here, look, and I'm like, I can't, I'm driving. So as soon as I stopped at the stop sign there, I got out of my car, and I look up in the sky, and it's the same thing, a orangish, reddish colored globe, but it's higher up in the sky, so it looks smaller. At another point, I was outside with my kids, and I'd set up a whole, like, bed thing in the back of the truck, and we're trying to check out the Perseids, and I've always, like, since my mom passed, been kind of obsessed with the sky and taking pictures of the sky and, you know, thinking my mom painted that for me, so on and so forth. But the moon this night had this particular, like, electric blue glow coming off of it, and it was just radiating on the clouds, and it was so pretty, so I'm taking pictures of it, and it's amazing. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but as I'm going through my pictures to see how they turned out and the clarity, so on and so forth, first picture I see, there's a ring of lights on this cloud by the moon, and I call it the conference in the sky because there's different colored lights in a circle, and they're just sitting there. And then later on, the more pictures I take, I see these different shuttle-looking craft, like individual shuttlecraft, and they're in a formation around the clouds, kind of like they're trying to hide along the cloud line or within the clouds, but you could obviously see them in these pictures. And it was funny how when you look at them, they're in the same formation. If they're pointing up or down or to the side, they're all doing the same thing. So that was pretty amazing, and that, you know, just reconfirmed to me that my dad was right. There are aliens, UFOs, and, you know, there's been so many experiences that people have had. Another thing that makes you feel like you're crazy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can't ignore it. You know, there's something to it. You know, I kind of come from the camp that I believe that a lot of these things that we encounter are all kind of those ultra type terrestrials, where they come from this plane. They just come from different dimensions. And, you know, there's an intelligence. A lot of the orbs, there's always an intelligence to them. And, like, everybody can see these things, and especially psychics and sensitives has the ability to see these things. They just, sometimes everybody perceives them differently. Somebody might see a huge mothership in this car, the next car they might just see a light in the sky. it depends on your ability and your vibrational state is how much you can see to those dimensions, to that portal. And I think that's how these entities can come through. And you interact with these different entities, and they mimic things. They can mimic certain things that you can relate to, but a lot of times you can see them as they really are. And I think it kind of goes back in the time when you get different fairies and different things like that. They all kind of tie together.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And it was interesting, to me as well, like, why did myself and my daughter see the same thing, but my husband saw something different? It sort of makes you wonder if it was using a cloaking device, but we could see what it actually was, but he couldn't. It was trying to portray itself as something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. At another point, we saw, like you said, a mothership. We were working overnight security on the fairgrounds, and I have a friend named Johnny, and he's Black and Cherokee, and he's just sitting there looking up at the sky, and he's like, what the hell is that? So we all turn around and we look up, and you see this ring of lights, and it's just kind of spinning around, and then it would kind of tilt to the right and then tilt to the left, and then all of a sudden it kind of went into a U shape, which was really, really weird. And we're like, what the hell is it doing? And we sat there and watched it forever, and I'm like, you know what, guys, we're sitting here staring up in the sky. Somebody's going to walk up on us. And right as I said that, somebody did walk up on us, and there's a couple guys kind of further out, and they were trying to pull something, but, luckily we were on to them. But yeah, that was interesting. The last time I saw a UFO, we had driven from Arizona to Arkansas to bury my Uncle Daddy Bill. He raised me, so I kind of call him my Uncle Daddy. Sounds funny, but we went out there to bury him with his parents, because their cemetery is actually a historic cemetery now, and they allowed us to bury him right on top of where his parents were buried. And on the way back, we were outside of, it starts with an A. It's not Austin, Texas, but a town that starts with an A, and it's just fields and fields and fields of all these red lights for hundreds of miles, it seemed like. Forever, as far as you could see, and as far as you drove, like, there was just red lights because of all these windmills that are out there trying to collect energy. And then all of a sudden I see these, like, windows with white light coming out of it, and I'm like, what's that? And at first I'm thinking it's like some sort of stand where people, sit and keep track and monitor what these things are doing. And then as we get closer, I notice it's moving up and down and up and down. Although we're going straight and it's flat, no hills or anything. And this thing's moving up and down, up and down. And I told my cousin, who's my brother, because I got adopted by my aunt this last year. But I'm like, dude, check it out. What is that? And he's like, oh, it looks like some sort of stand or whatever where people do their work. And I'm like, no, but it's moving up and down. And he's checking it out, and he's trying to rationalize it and figure out what it is. And he didn't believe it was a UFO until as we passed it. And I'm trying to keep looking at it, but I'm getting a crick in my neck trying to follow it with my eyes. And he's in the back seat so he could see it better. And all of a sudden he said it just lifted up and then shot off like really quick. And that was the first time he had ever seen a UFO, so he was blown away. But it's just amazing, and it makes you wonder what they're doing, especially like these little orb things. Like, are they trying to gather or collect information, or what exactly are they doing here?
It makes you wonder. There seems to be an intelligence about them, and I'll share you a weird story out kind of with regard to the orbs in the sky and so on. Is that you remember when the psychic, Blossom Goodchild, said that the mothership was going to appear over Alabama? I think it was back in 2008. She was a psychic from Australia, and it made like news and everything. And we used to do a show on Y102 every Friday night with Rex on the radio. And I think he's out in Colorado now doing radio.
Oh, nice.
And I think this was like a Tuesday night, and it was supposed to happen. So Rex said, "Why don't y'all come in and we'll do a thing on the radio, and people can call in and see if they see anything over Alabama." So me and Hump and Jake, we went to Y102 and did the show, and we thought it was just going to be a fun night. Nothing's going to happen. And then, believe it or not, Rex started getting phone calls. People were seeing stuff in the sky. And then the security guard downstairs told Rex, he was friends with him. He said, "Y'all come downstairs and look." So me and Hump went downstairs, and Jake stayed upstairs in the radio booth with Rex. And we walked out to the street, and we looked up, and you saw these three balls of light in the sky. and it looked shaped like a triangle, but they would move in different areas, and they would like shift and turn, and then so I was the only time I've ever seen anything like that in the sky. When we seen it, and then they kept getting phone calls to the radio station, the news station. They called WSFA. When we went back upstairs, and then all of a sudden there was just a mass power outage out in West Montgomery, and basically it kind of went away and the story ended. But it's just one of those things that you never know, and there's no such thing as coincidences, and you hear these strange stories and everything else, and that's just one of those nights that it kind of fell into place. But I think it was back in 2008 when that happened.
Yeah, and I've said it very often. Fact is indeed much stranger than fiction. Like, a lot of this stuff you can't make up.
Oh, no, you can't. You can't make it up at all. Not at all.
So with your guys' investigations, do you get calls for UFO sightings or alien encounters and abductions?
We do. To be honest, I'm really more of like an old school, like 40, and that's kind of like, that's what we always been growing up as kids, is that, I like to read and research anything, and as soon as we got cars, if there was a sightings of a Bigfoot in this area, we would try to drive to the area and ask questions. We've always kind of worked and looked into everything, and when we first started working in this field and everything else, we've always kind of worked and dealt with everything. If there was a strange story, something unexplained, we went and investigated it. And the way we've done it a lot of times is that we just went and asked questions. We went and interviewed people. We had connections. We're all Masons, and we would know people and have connections to come in and ask these questions and basically interview people and just get their experiences. And then if we had an opportunity to ride those roads that night or to camp out or investigate it, we would do that. But sometimes we would just have to write down the experiences on firsthand knowledge and do that. We had a sighting of all places in our area where a gentleman one morning he was out feeding his cows, and he looked up he said it was maybe 100 yards up, and he saw this big dog. He said he looked at the big dog stood up on two legs, and it basically walked away. And it was basically a rougarou, like a wolf man. We thought, so we went and interviewed the guy. He contacted us through Lodge and all that, and then we met with him. There's another guy in that same area at the Boga Chitu boat ramp where he was fishing early one morning, and as he was fishing, his dog stood up. They looked to the bank, and next thing he saw was this big dog-like being standing up on two legs looking at him. Then it ran off in the woods. And I wrote a blog about it in our little WSFA and the stories that were reported. And about a year or so later, we were speaking at this event at Bonta Vista, this paranormal event. We got done speaking. A gentleman came up to me and gave me his card, who was an Alabama State Trooper. And he told me that he read my blog and stuff that I wrote for WSFA, and he wanted to share a story. And he said that I was driving through Lowndes County one night, and Lowndes County is a really rural county with everything seen. He said when he came across the road, he saw this huge dog. He said he almost thought it was a bear. He flipped his spotlights, hits his blue lights. He said it stood up on two legs. It looked at him. He had red eyes, and it turned and ran into the woods. And he seen it and shared his experience. And I think that's kind of we've always done things over the years, and that we've kind of fell in the right place, that we've had an opportunity, that new people that been able to share stories with us, and we've always been able to get into research some of the strange things that's happening out there.
Yeah, there's so many things, like you can't even wrap your mind around it. But you had mentioned fairies and such earlier. Have you guys had any cases as far as that goes, relating to fairies?
You know what? I'm a believer in things like that, especially the nature spirits and different things. And, there's a place here in our area called Bear Creek Swamp. That's one of the first places that I've always investigated and carried anybody. If we would go there. And what it is like after the Creek Indian War, it was the holy ground for a lot of the creeks and the natural springs in the swamp. They would use that water as healing water. And Andrew Jackson took that land from the creeks and seeded it for some settlers to move in. And the swamp's still there and so on. And there's a dirt road that cuts right to the middle of the swamp, and there's still a natural spring that people go and get the water. there used to be a dumpster nearby, and the people kept getting reports of riding by to that spring and getting to the dumpster and seeing little people out around the dumpster, and they would report that to the police, or seeing little people moving about. And they ended up, there was so many reports of seeing little people, they ended up having to move the dumpster off that road. I don't know why there was a dumpster on that dirt road. And a lot of the things there reported, and some of the phenomena, is that when you get the spring water and stuff, sometimes they see the orbs of light, and the orbs of light will move across the road, and the next thing you know, it end up forming like a person and moves on across. And a lot of the lights and the fairies and the little people are very common in that Bear Creek Swamp area. And there's a lot of stories and legends you can Google about it, and that's a really a creepy place to be. And it's one of those places where you can go through and you can just feel the energy change. Where sometimes on certain nights when things are just right, it's almost seems like you can slip through this dimension to the others. It's like a really thin veil place, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're talking about little people, and I actually saw a couple once. I was living with my sister, and I was 16 at the time, and, I'm laying in bed, everybody's asleep, and, of course, I'm just, staring out into the living room kitchen area from my niece's bedroom. She's got bunk beds, so I'm on the bottom bunk, she's on the top, and all of a sudden I hear things moving around, and I hear this chattering noise, and then two little people climb up onto this shelf that she had. She had kind of like a little shelf with knickknacks and books and stuff on it, and above that another cupboard with glass coverings. But you see them climb up, and then they're walking along, and one sits at the end nearest me, and he's just sitting there kicking his legs back and forth, and he's wearing these little coveralls and no shirt, and the other one has like a little white t-shirt, and I don't know what he was wearing underneath that because I couldn't see through the other little person. And he comes up behind the one with coveralls on and pushes him off the edge of this thing, and he flips around and grabs the edge of it and pulls himself back up, and they're kind of bickering and pushing each other around, and I go to sit up to run out there because I just can't believe my eyes, and I can't believe what I'm seeing, and as I sit up, the view that I see is blocked by the wall, and then I go in there, and as soon as I go through the door, they're gone. But that's the first time I ever encountered little people, and they're probably about a foot tall, but they look like little humans. Yeah. It was super cool, and that was there in, I believe it was Ratcliffe, Arkansas, up Wildcat Road. I've never seen fairies. One thing I saw at my granny's house, they reminded me of gremlins with the shiny skin, and their ears weren't as big, but still the same shape, and I'm laying there one night trying to get to sleep, and I see this light come through my window, and I hear chanting and drums beating, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? Because right outside my window is the side yard, and then a fence, and then the chicken yard, and there shouldn't be any light whatsoever going on out there. And so I creep down my bed, and I'm peeking out the window, and I see these little gremlin type things chanting and dancing around this fire, and some of them have like little spears and stuff, and others are banging on drums, and then all of a sudden, all at once, they stop and they turn really fast to look my direction, and I slam myself back in the bed, pull my blankets up, because that's the best protection as a kid is your blankets. Yeah. So I pull it up like right below my eyes so I could see what's going on, and I try to stay as still as possible, and I could see their shadows against the wall moving closer and closer to my window. And you can hear them scratching up the wall and holding on to the windowsill, and they're looking in to see who was watching them. And then they move down the house towards where my little brother's room was, and then the light's gone. You don't hear any more noise. Well, after that, my brother started running through the house every night screaming, saying, they're after me, and trying to get away from these things. And he'd run out of his room past my bedroom into the living room, and then through the pantry room is what I call it. That's where my granny kept all her baking goods and stuff. And then he'd run into the kitchen, and every time he came back through the kitchen, there was a little inch-high step to go up into the pantry room, and he'd always trip over that and scramble away. Well, this last time, my grandparents both got up, and they caught him and held him looking in the direction of these things, and then he kind of just passed out and collapsed in their arms. And then after that, it didn't happen anymore. But it seems like since then, no matter what, he's been in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I I've heard of the little gremlins, but I hadn't heard of a story like that. That's really interesting. But you know what? These things, it's very, I believe that people are open to these worlds, and you have that ability to live in both worlds naturally, in that vibrational spiritual state. And these things happen to us that not anybody can actually understand and comprehend, but these things are real. I mean, they've been documented through history, through generations, through different people's belief systems, and these things happen, and they're real. Like my friend, his grandmother practiced the same thing my grandmother did. And he was a good friend of ours, part of our team. He lives in New York now, Jeremy, and he always tells a story about when him and his grandmother was fishing. And haints are a big part of our belief system. When somebody's working you or something really bad coming along, that you get signs. And a lot of times you get the signs from whether somebody hadn't been in your life for a long time will contact you. Could be an animal sign and different things. And basically him and his grandma was fishing. I'm going to get some water real fast. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Him and his grandmother was fishing. And they look across the pond, and they see two men standing across the pond. So she tells him to get his pole, get their stuff together, and let's start walking. And they start to walk away, and the guys are following. And she tells Jeremy not to look back. Don't look back. And they're probably about 20 yards behind them. And then there's two people, two black men following them. And Jeremy and his grandmother keeps going, and she tells him, don't look back, don't look back. And as soon as they get to the house, he looks back, and they're two big black dogs now following them. And that's basically those haints and those hellhounds. You hear them talk about it, different things like that. They appear in our belief system. Those haints and these different things make appearances, and they're almost like spirit mimics, where they show up in human form, but there's nothing human about them. They just don't fit in, and they come to you, and they're always signs of that something's coming, that you have to keep them out of your life and be wary at the same time.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like shapeshifters, because at first they appear as men and then all of a sudden they're dogs.
Yes, absolutely. That's basically what they are. And, and that a lot of times that's what these haints are. They can do that. They will shapeshift. And a lot of times they have different forms, but a lot of times they come from humans to dogs.
That's amazing. Out here in the Four Corners area, I believe it's the Navajo tribe. And they have what they call skinwalkers. And
yes.
Basically, in order to be a skinwalker, you have to take a life. You could do it voluntarily or involuntarily, like when you're born and your mother dies. You basically took her life unintentionally. So there's good ones and bad ones. And there was an account of these two, I believe it was coyotes, and they're running in and out of traffic along the highway at this high rate of speed. And people are calling it in, and finally the tribal police get out there. They chase them down into this cove sort of thing in the canyons. And when they finally get to the back of this canyon, they find a man and woman with, their faces painted, and they're naked at this point. And, they call to the chief, hey, what do we do about this? And they're like, nothing. They've done nothing illegal. They're just basically practicing their religion. But I'd always wanted to see one, and my native friends would tell me stories, and we drive from our home here down to Phoenix to visit my mother on Christmas sometimes, or I'll go down there by myself. But this one year, for Christmas vacation, we're driving, and the kids, of course, are bored, and it's dark, and we're telling them about skinwalkers, and keep your eyes open, let's see if we see any. And all of a sudden, there's this red and white truck, like a small Chevy, on the side of the road, and the doors are open, the interior lights are on, and there's nobody around it. So we're like, I wonder what's going on there. And a little ways further down the road, there's this tall lady with blonde hair, and her skin was really, really pale white, and she's looking the opposite direction, and she looks at first like she's pregnant, and then the closer we get, this woman does not look like she's pregnant. Like, her shirt is up and her pants are kind of popped open. It looks like she ate a freaking human being. And the weird thing about her is that her arms extended down past her knees. So this is not, a human being. I believe that it was a skinwalker that we saw. But I'm just glad it was looking the opposite direction, because I've heard if you make eye contact, it could actually, take control of you or whatnot. But my husband's like, hey, should we go turn around and help her out? And I'm like, heck no, you better keep driving. I don't want to go back and see what that is and be its next meal. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, it is. These stories and these experiences like that, it's crazy. But it happens. People have these experiences and different things, and regards to the skinwalkers and different things. Have you heard or found out where, like, let's say in our area, we have a lot of Hispanics has moved in to our areas and different things, and they live in like certain neighborhoods or trailer parks, whatever. And we've actually had reports of actually somebody seeing something like they described it as almost like a deer skeleton head, but a person almost standing on the side of the road walking through the woods. That was some people reported it. People see these things and all that, but of course we always look into it, and it always struck me because it was right next to one of the Hispanic type of trailer parks, and it makes you wonder. A lot of times when people move and stuff, they carry their traditions, carry their belief system with them, and a lot of times it could carry a lot of the activity as well.
Yeah, and not everybody stays on tribal land. A lot of them move away, and I have heard stories like back east of different things like that, and it's funny how you explain that, because when you look online under skinwalkers, there is like a picture of a man with a skeleton deer head going on. So that's interesting that they reported that.
Yeah, definitely. My friend Hump, you have to get him on your show sometimes. He can tell that story a lot better than I can, because he's a police officer, and he actually had that report come to him.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to have him on the show sometime. But yeah, it's amazing how they're able to do that, and it's some form of magic, and I don't know if it's black magic or what. But like I said, some are good, some are bad, and it just depends on, did you intentionally take that life or did you unintentionally?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you never know what you're going to run into. And then you're talking about lights and stuff. There's different sorts of orbs. And there's a canyon that I grew up near in Cortez, and we'd go out as teenagers and have drinks and smoke and whatever, and you'd look down in this little canyon, and there'd be different colored orb lights like flying around. And I think these were not alien orbs; these were like spiritual orbs or something. I don't know if they're fairies or what, but it was really intriguing.
Yeah. There's different things like that. At Bear Creek Swamp, that's what's reported, with regards to the lights. And a lot of it can be mistaken for swamp gas. But when you see a ball, an orb, or see like the swamp gas, and I know a lot of people are trying to say, oh, it's swamp gas, but a lot of people have seen the balls that comes across the roads and different things like that. Some of our experiences over the years investigating there, that we had a microphone sitting on top of our vehicle was we was doing EVPs and just sitting there recording, and something actually, you hear something put their hand on the truck and slap the microphone off. We had that experience. We had a video camera where we videoed like a car passing us by, and it's a dirt road, shouldn't be any vehicles going by, and then we went back to check the video, no car showed up on the video. So those areas and different things like that, it has to do with the area, and I think the energy of the area.
Yeah, it's very interesting and intriguing, and so many questions that we're trying to answer, and so many things you can't really explain, but maybe someday.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, on that note, we're going to go to our second musical break, and we have Hosni Bronx on, and he's going to be singing Strong Life as well as Free Child. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break.
I don't know Babylon make you suffer. What the desire? Young life. We are ready to fight. Hard life for my people. I don't know why my people live this life. I don't know why my people live this life. I don't know how to fight, 'cause my people suffer. What do you want, Babylon? I don't understand why this world is so strange, strange with my people. I don't know how to fight, but if we are together, it will work. It will work. Babylon no have no heart. 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 My people, you have to survive. Yeah, you must rebuild you and make your own way. You must not give up. The beginning of the revolt will start. We need to follow our true destiny. Whoa, yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know why my people live this life. I don't know why my people live this life. The obstacle we face, yeah, is Babylon. The world is a good place, yeah, for our freedom. You take everything, you don't breathe anything, yeah, yeah. Young life, all anti-dread. We must believe in a magical, powerful force that unite us, and not just these people stay speechless again. We don't want to talk, no, it's time to fight, yeah. We start talking. Babylon make you suffer. 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 What the desire? Young life. We are ready to fight.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and joining us tonight. Tonight we have paranormal investigator and author Shawn Sellers on. Shawn, welcome back, and thanks so much for joining us. Sorry you're feeling ill, but I'm so glad you made it.
Yeah, me too. I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Man, I got a laugh on that break. This guy, going by the name over here in Periscope of Bag of Nuts, said he's worried about his pet. It got an STD. His bird got an STD called Chirpies, and it needs treatment. But yeah, that just made me laugh. Oh my gosh. So we're talking about the paranormal, and there's just so many things underneath the umbrella of paranormal, and we've discussed a lot of them. One of the things you were talking about was Bigfoot, and these things are not only seen throughout the United States, but all over the world. In certain regions, they're called different things. Have you personally had an experience with Bigfoot, or a sighting, or any investigations on that?
I've investigated several cases and researched and interviewed some people that had experiences, but I do have a personal Bigfoot story, and we actually lived down in Crenshaw County, Alabama, and we lived kind of out in the woods, and it was when I was coaching and working at a high school there, and then my kids and I would always tell ghost stories, and we had this little fire pit area, and we'd tell ghost stories and different things, and we'd have their friends come over, and then my stepdaughter at the time and my boys said, "Do you know how to call a Bigfoot?" And I was like, I do know how to call a Bigfoot. And I said, what you have to do, you have to get a wooden baseball bat. You have to pray. You get the baseball bat. You got to bang it on the tree, and you got to leave an offering for it. And you leave it a gift, and then it'll come and bring you a gift and be a sighting. And it was all a joke. So me and my two boys and my stepdaughter, we all basically we got the wooden baseball bat. We went there that night. We went to the fire pit. We stood out there. So we went to the stump, and they cut up apples, oranges, and I think my stepdaughter left like one of the little bracelets or something with beads and stuff there at the stump. And then we banged the tree and did that for a little while, and then we all laughed about it and went to bed. And it was a big joke. Well, probably about 3 o'clock that morning, our dog started going crazy in the house. I mean, just barking, and we didn't, and it woke us up, and to the point where it wanted to come outside. And our place had this high porch, and there was no easy way up on the porch. And when we opened the front door, there was a puppy there on the step of one of our front stoops, and it was like a puppy. It's almost looked like a wild type of dog. It was a mixed breed puppy, but it was very young. We actually ended up having to feed it with a bottle, and then of course the kids. Everybody looked outside, didn't see anything. They went down to the stump, and of course the fruits and the bracelet were gone. That was easily explained and so on. So we made a joke that it was basically the Bigfoots traded out the puppy and all that. But there's no such thing as coincidences or anything like that. Well, several months down the way, I was in class one day, and the kid, one of the students there, he's actually was a valedictorian, was working in Troy, and he's cut through Troy to come home to our area through Crenshaw County, and my house was kind of right there at these crossroads, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And he said he wanted to talk to me about something. I was like, all right, sure, man. And I was like, well, come back after class and tell me what. He's like, man. And all the kids there always would get stories and stuff, always ask me stuff. He's like, I know you ain't gonna think I'm crazy, but let me tell you what happened. He was like, I was coming home from work. It was about midnight. I was at the four-way stop, and right when I got there and passed your front yard, I looked to the right, and I looked like this big hairy man standing up in your yard right by the tree. He was like, it wasn't that tall. It was probably about 6 foot tall, but I seen it, and it stood there. It was right in your front yard as I passed it by. And he's like, I know I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but I seen it. And I've heard legends and stuff. I mean, a lot of people had stories and different sightings and so on. We never seen anything in our yard or had any experiences, but we did have one of the students see something in our yard, and we had the experience with that puppy being brought to our doorstep.
Yeah, and what you were explaining there with the baseball bat in the wood, that's called wood knocking.
Yes, yes.
And that's how Bigfoot reportedly communicate in certain ways.
Yes.
Have you heard at all that Bigfoot and Fae are actually in league?
I have not.
I know a lady up north here in Colorado, and she's told me so many different stories about the property that she purchased, and she's got a couple houses on there, and she keeps finding different things as far as like different smudge prints on her windows and doors and on her vehicle. And she has reported that they've actually gotten into her house and done certain things, but she said that there are fairy that kind of lead them. So like the fairy are the brains and the Bigfoot is the brawn. But yeah, I'd never heard that until she had mentioned it. So that to me was pretty interesting, and I could see that happening. And then I've heard Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I can easily believe that. I believe they all come from the same place in that other dimension. The Bible talks about in his house there's many mansions, and I believe they all come from that other place. But I can easily see that connection. I've never really thought about that connection before.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I never thought about it until she had mentioned it, and I'm like, that kind of really makes sense, But it's really interesting, like, people talk about Bigfoot, and why are pictures always blurry, so on and so forth. How come nobody has ever, really ran into one? Like, you see these sightings, and even off the Durango and Silverton narrow gauge train, people took pictures of a Bigfoot kind of going through this open field, and, people are saying, oh, that's just somebody in a costume, but this thing looks real. But a lot of times when people get pictures of it, it's blurry, and it made me wonder, like, is it because it's so fast and elusive or whatever, or is it due to it could be a ghost of a Bigfoot? Like, I've seen different ghosts of animals. I've seen a cat as a ghost in a house that I used to own, a black cat. Couldn't find it anywhere. Like, I saw it on a couple different occasions, turned the house upside down trying to find this thing. Couldn't find it anywhere, so I just assumed it's a spirit. And then not too long ago, driving down the highway coming into Bayfield, Colorado, a deer ran in front of the car, but the first portion of the deer looked just like, a real life deer, but the back portion of the deer was just a blur of light, like a smudge of light. So I think that was actually a ghost of a deer. And I was like, wow, that was pretty interesting. Not only did I see it, but my husband saw it. So that was intriguing.
Yeah, the spirit animals. But, like a lot of these, like the crypto stuff with the werewolf, the dogmen, the Bigfoot, so on, different things like that. A lot of people have these sightings and these experiences, and they're in almost like a relaxed state or a trance-like state where they was fishing or they was going down a highway and they had that common sense, or where they didn't have their gun. They were just in a relaxed vibrational state, and they have these experiences and they see them. And I think that's a lot of times why we don't really pick them up on our cameras, because they kind of in between our world and their world. When they come in, they hear in this physical form, but we see them when we're in that lower state. And that's why you got the wood knocking and some of the shamanistic drumming and stuff can help you call certain Bigfoots and different things like that. And I think it has a lot to do with the vibrational state that you are spiritually.
Yeah, and different people talk about also, like you were saying, doing gifting sites and leaving things.
Yes.
And seeing if it disappears, And, different animals like sparkly things like magpies, they love sparkly things. Different birds and critters love it. But Bigfoot likes it as well, and I heard they really like peanut butter cups, which I do too. I can relate. I can't eat big peanut butter cups anymore because I found big cups and there's just no comparison. But it's interesting. We were working a security job up in Rico, and there was an old mine that they were going into, and they're trying to clean all this dirty, polluted water out of it. And so they wanted security up there because people basically used to go up there and do target practice, so on and so forth, and they didn't want them shooting these tanks that were holding this contaminated water. So we're up there during the day, also at night, doing overnight security, and one particular week, we had a lot of activity going on as far as Bigfoot. And the only reason I say it's Bigfoot is because, you have different animals like bears and deer and stuff running around. And yes, of course, that can knock, different pebbles and rocks and whatever off the side of the mountain. But this thing was lobbing big boulders down the side of this mountain, and they'd land in this little creek bed. And my friend Johnny Williams, the Black Cherokee dude, he's like, hell no, I ain't getting out. I ain't going to go and, you know, take care of these different things. I'm staying in this truck. But we thought for sure there was a Bigfoot. So later on, we went up and did an investigation at the Enterprise Bar and Grill, which was amazing. And they're like, what do you want to do tomorrow? Well, I want to go up the mountain here, and I want to see if I can find any tracks or anything, because I know there's a Bigfoot. And so I'm going to admit to breaking the law. There's no trespassing signs and stuff when we went up there at this point, and I crossed the line and went over there across the creek to where we heard these noises, and I actually did find Bigfoot tracks, and I took pictures of it with my camera next to, like, my foot next to this print, and, you know, putting a rock where the big toe was, because it's kind of a gravelly area, but you could still see the imprint. So I put a rock at where the toe was and a rock at the back of the foot, so you could kind of see where it's at. And excuse me, we go back down to the Enterprise Bar and Grill, and we're talking about, you know, the Bigfoot, so on and so forth. And this woman comes up, and she has a house just down the way, and she said her and her daughter go out every morning, and they'll smoke together and drink coffee, and they look up at this mountain, which is on the other side of where the mine is. So the mine is to the left. On the right side, there's a mountain with aspen trees and pine trees, of course, and there's a clearing and these aspen trees. And she said that one morning, her and her daughter are sitting there drinking coffee, and they both saw an albino Bigfoot walk through this clearing of aspen, and it took like maybe 8 steps to get through it. And it's a really wide space. So this thing was pretty big. And I haven't really heard of albino Bigfoot. You know, you hear of the Yeti and stuff like that. But, you know, in every strain of creature or whatever, even humans, there's albinos. So it makes sense that there could be an albino Bigfoot. Yeah,
definitely. That's a cool story. That's interesting. But, you know, they was in a relaxed state. They was having their coffee, and then, you know, the smoke and everything else is almost like a area to allow them to see, to relax with that, to come through to our plane. You know, I think that happens a lot of time when people have these experiences. But, you know, like the Bigfoot here in our area, you know, they call them the skunk apes, and they call them even the Alabama boogers and different things like that. They're normally around 5 to 6 feet tall around here when they report them and they see them.
Well, yeah, and they're not all huge, you know. There's adults, and there's, you know, preteens. There's little baby ones, which I wish I could see a little baby Bigfoot. That'd be so cute. So ugly it's cute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of people say that perhaps Bigfoot could be interdimensional. I've heard other people say they think that Bigfoot has some sort of relation with aliens because somebody saw a Bigfoot being beamed up to a spacecraft, but who's to say they're in league, or who's to say perhaps this Bigfoot got abducted?
Yeah. You know, I think they're all interdimensional, and I think that, you know, a lot of times, like the Bigfoot phenomena, the UFO phenomena, all that stuff, it almost goes hand in hand. You know, you have, like, a lot of those areas, it's all the same hotbed in the same areas. That you can't have one without the other, almost. Like, they all kind of tie together with experiences in these areas.
It's very interesting. And you were talking about Dogman, and I haven't heard a lot of that out here in the West, but back east I've heard a lot of things about Dogman. And then not too long ago I heard reports of Dogman type creatures, but these things were wearing some sort of armor and carrying weapons. Have you heard anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't heard anything like that. That's pretty cool, kind of. That's interesting. Where were that sightings at?
Yeah, it was interesting to me too, and it reminded me kind of what do you call it from Egypt? It's not the jackal, it's something else. But yeah, it reminded me of that, the whole Dogman thing, wearing the armor and carrying the spear, and it just kind of took me back to that Egyptian picture that I've seen that they had portrayed back then of different creatures, like some with bird heads, some with dog heads, and it makes you wonder, is that interdimensional and it's just kind of coming through where people can see it for a minute and then it's gone? But that was pretty intriguing, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen next?
Yeah. You know, it's constantly changing. You know, I guess, you know, I'm going to try to Google and research that. That's pretty cool. I hadn't seen anything like that. Most of our dogmen, you know, the ones I've personally talked to people that's witnessed them and seen them, They've been on mostly they've seen them on all fours except the one on the boat landing, and then they stand up and then walk off. The guy that was actually fishing, they say he was standing on all fours on the bank, and then turned and went to the woods. But I think he would probably really scare the fire out of me if I saw him standing there with swords and armor and everything else. It's a game changer.
Right? Put away your kids, put away your wife. The world's gonna end.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it's so interesting, all these different things, and like Bigfoot is called different things in different areas. Swamp apes. Yeah, it's intriguing. And it's funny in the field of paranormal. Okay, so ever since paranormal shows started happening, I'm grateful in a sense because it's been opening minds. You know, people that are closed-minded tend to love these shows and watch these shows like everybody's watching them. But it causes people to go out and willy-nilly do these investigations, which in reality can be quite dangerous if you're not careful. You have to use different protections. Have you ever had an issue when you go out on an investigation, something attaching to you and coming back home? Or have you ever had a possession or a walk-in after an investigation?
You know, we had an investigation one time that it was a private case we was working, and it was really just an initial interview. And it was a case where a guy that was married, and his wife had alcohol and drug problems, and she committed suicide. And he remarried a younger lady and moved her in the house, and they started having activity, like crazy activity in the house. So we just went for the initial interviews and so on. And once we got done, we was going to go home and probably go to the movies, and it was in the same area. So when we left, and we got a green light, and a car runs a red light and almost T-bones us. Then we get to our house, and we walk into our house, and every cabinet in the house was open. I'm talking if there's a cabinet in the bathroom, the hallway, the kitchen. If there's a cabinet door, every one of them was open. Every one of them. Then we decided, let's just go to the movies. We'll come back. We'll do a cleansing on the house. When we went to the movies, our debit cards didn't work. The magnetic thing was taken out of our cards.
Oh, wow.
That was something that was something that happened that kind of always stands out to me. And that happens. You know, a lot of times I think you can work so many cases, you kind of get that spiritual residue attached to you, and it starts to weigh on you, and it starts to affect you and your everyday stuff. You got to learn to kind of when to shake it off and get rid of it. There've been cases and stuff that I've seen that affected me and affected some of the members of our team, and you just got to have to take that spiritual responsibility and recognizing it when it happens.
Yeah, I learned a very valuable lesson about cleansing and such. I had a lady that was about to have a baby, and she wanted her house cleansed before the baby was born. And she lived right up the road from me, so, you know, all my friends on my team work muggle jobs, so they're not available during the week. So I'm like, you know, it's just up the road. I'll go up there and I'll do it myself. Generally, when I pull up on a place, I'll get vibes or feelings off of it. How I need to protect myself, so on and so forth, but I didn't feel anything. So I go in there without taking precautions. I do have my tourmaline and my selenite in my pocket, but I go in there, and this lady had purchased a cleansing kit, and I'm showing her what exactly is in it and how to use it, and then I show her how to sage or smudge her house. And so I'm going through and I'm showing her, you got to open, you know, all your drawers, under your bed. You need to waft this smoke everywhere. Some people leave a window open for the entities to get out. I like to smoke it out and then open a window and let them get out that way. But so I'm in this smoke the whole time, and I'm not feeling threatened. I'm not feeling any vibes whatsoever off this place. And then I leave. I don't do any protective things as I leave because I'm not feeling anything. I don't feel like there's anything there. But later on that night, I take off my pants, which have my stones in it, and I put on my pajamas, and then not even 30 minutes later, Tessa checked out, and somebody else checked in. And this thing was mad, and it was evil. And I come to behind the wheel of my car, no clothes on whatsoever. I'm heading towards the Ute tribe, tribal land. And I'm like, okay, I need to turn around and go back home. Like, what the hell is happening? So I get back home. My husband and my kids are locked in the master bedroom. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put on my pajamas. I'll sleep out here tonight. And then I'll ask what's going on tomorrow. And my husband came out the next day and woke me up. He's like, are you okay? Generally, he'd be pissed off at me. But he was genuinely worried. And he's like, I know that wasn't you. Not only did your voice change, but he said my facial structure changed. And so he was legitimately worried. And I learned that day, if I am compromised in any way, not to go on an investigation. And the night before, I was just so excited that I couldn't sleep the night before. So I was compromised in that way. And so I've missed out on a couple investigations because I do feel compromised and I don't want to go out and endanger not only my teammates, but the client that we're trying to help.
Absolutely. You know, that's something I've learned over the years, that if you get to a location and it don't give you any type of vibe, that's the number one warning sign. That if it's just completely dull of energy and feeling, that's a number one warning sign. And that's something I've encountered numerous times over the years, and that's always a good telltale thing. If it don't give you some type of feeling or vibe, it's something kind of dark and trickery involved.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier about when you were in New Orleans and the spirit, there's obviously a spirit there singing to the baby, but once you were there, nothing happened. And a lot of times they will hide out from you and not communicate or show themselves, basically. I don't know if you need to give it time. You guys were there a whole week. You would think that this entity would get used to you and try to communicate because it knows you're there, but perhaps it didn't really care that you were there and it just wanted to help the baby by singing to it.
You know, it was really a cool house. It's a 3-story house, and it still had the original servant quarters. And they've renovated the full house, but the servant quarters they hadn't renovated completely. They just started halfway. And I really feel like it was just a passing spirit. New Orleans is one of those cities that everywhere it's haunted. It's just a different vibe, and I really feel like that. Whatever happened that night in that house, it was just passing through, and it just was something that was there. And I don't think it was there any other time. And the whole time in that house, it did not feel anything. It was just it was creepy at times, but we just didn't have any other experience, no evidence, nothing else happened. And I don't know if his wife ever came back and spent another night there or not, but I know he ended up selling it over the years. I know it was sold the last time we went down there during Thanksgiving, so I do believe he sold it.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, like on Facebook you see these beautiful large structures that have been abandoned for years, and it makes you wonder, did people just move out because you see their plates and their cups and all the things laying there as if something happened and they just left and never came back?
Yeah, it's like something that they just leave it. I can kind of understand that too at times when you just kind of just walk away from something and leave it. But I think sometimes that there's certain things that happen that people can just leave it and that it just stays there. And something about the energy of places that keeps people away. A lot of people don't want to have anything to do with that location, and it sits that way, and it almost sits that way hidden in a way. That it's there, but it's really not there. People don't pay a lot of attention to it until a certain time period, I guess you can say.
So when you guys go out as a team and investigate, do you use a lot of tools? Do you just use your intuition and gut instincts? What exactly do you bring to your investigations to investigate?
You know what? I liked, whenever if we're able to investigate a place a long period of time, I like setting up the cameras, doing everything else. But if we're only there for like that night, don't have a long time, I like to. A lot of times you come in, set cameras up, you disturb the energy. If you're not there for a long time for that energy to settle back down, it's just setting up, breaking down. So I like to be there for a short period of time. I like to have basic things. Always have your recorders, notebook, pen, paper, your handheld cameras. We still use shack hacks, just basic EMF detectors. I like it as basic as possible. And even since I was a kid, I still use a Boy Scout compass and set that down to see if that spins. That's something I always use. And we keep it very basic. Certain members of our team that might be more on the techie side, we'll let them focus on that. And it's really what you're comfortable with working with to document what's happening, the experience is what we try to do when we work these cases.
Have you guys ever been attacked on a investigation?
We've had I can tell you we've had certain experiences. There was this one where we were basically this gentleman, Jay Christian, he was our pastor, and he would do exorcisms and different deliverances and so on. And we would travel with him at times, and just to go and document and so on. And we was in Georgia, and we was there at a house, and he was interviewing a family. It was a pastor. The guy and his wife, and Jay was in there talking to him. And I looked at the guy, and there was something about the guy I just absolutely just didn't believe. I really just didn't believe it. I just thought that I just think he just wanted attention and what nothing. Just didn't feel it. And then I just said, I'm just going to pray and kind of plead the blood for the guy, just in thought. Thought creates. I was just going to pray for him. And I began to pray for him, and he was basically in the other room, and he basically jumped up at the table and screams to the other room to where I'm at that it don't work. And I ended up having 3 scratches across my chest. That's something that kind of stands out that to me. We was at another investigation one time, and my friend Hump was there, and basically it was almost like a black shadow. It was almost like basically best way to describe it is like a towel, a black mask that looked like a towel, and it completely wrapped him up, and you couldn't see him, and he was gone temporarily. And that's something that's where he was attacked, and he ended up having to take a break from the work for a little while. So I think if you're in this field long enough, you're going to get attacked and have these moments.
Yeah, and people automatically assume when you do get scratched and it's in a number of 3, you have 3 scratches, they automatically assume it's a demon. But yeah. I believe it's not always a demon. Sometimes it's an entity or a spirit that's doing it. Whether it's trying to get your attention or scare you off or whatnot. But I don't think it's always a demon, and there's different ways to kind of try to figure that out. So what did you do to protect yourself when you got scratched?
But I always use the white light in prayer. I always do that before I go. And, here's the thing. I'm come from the camp, too, that I don't believe everything's demons, anything. I think a lot of times if you have a Christian team that comes into a home that they allege demonic attack, these entities can take that thought form, and they can shape what that is, and it kind of manifests that type of energy to that. And I'm not in those camps that I always believe that. And I think these things happen in threes is just part of that thing to mock certain stuff, but don't mean that it is always demons. And what I always do, I always pray. I always take whenever I take showers in the morning, I do it like a spiritual shower. I imagine all the negativity and everything going down in the drain. I just spend a lot of time in prayer and meditation, and I use the white light and stuff for cleansing constantly. And I think if you're in this field, you have to almost do it daily.
Yeah, something followed me home once, and I'm sitting there going through my emails on my phone, and all of a sudden I feel a burning along my pant line around my shirt, and I had just gone outside and smoked on the front porch, and so I thought perhaps a spider had got up under my shirt and bit me or something, and I lift up and I see, like you said, scratches, but there were only 2. I think the other one was blocked by my pant line, and I had a little bottle, a spray bottle with holy water in it, so I sprayed it on there, and it immediately went away. And then the next time it happened, it was in a number of 3, and I started feeling dizzy, lightheaded, and really, really weird. And I sprayed it on there again, but this time it took a little longer for it to go away. And I'm not Catholic, but I do believe in certain things from certain religions, certain things that I have faith in, that I believe in. But that seemed to work for me.
Yes.
And we all have the light within us, the white light, and my mentor, she taught me how to take that light and rub your hands basically together until you feel it getting warm, and then you build that ball of light in your hands, and you can cause that light to grow bigger and bigger and bigger until it envelops your body, and that kind of shields you from different attacks as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that how you use the white light, or how exactly do you do it?
I always do it is basically I imagine there's like a spiritual motor, and I lower it. And I imagine that motor lowered, and then I raised the motor back up, and I imagine it almost like a white light covering myself, almost like I'm pulling it over my head, and I'm seeing myself inside of it. And then sometimes if I'm working a case and anything like comes out, and I hadn't just cloak myself in that white light, I almost just imagine a white light like in basically in front of me and coming out of my chest. And I just use that thought to put that white light around what I'm doing. And if I'm working cases, I have certain team members. If I feel certain things, I imagine a white light around them, and also kind of plead the blood of Jesus a lot as well. And, also, if you're ever fearful to have that attack, if you just repeat God's love over and over and over again, it'll automatically kind of lower the vibrations and kind of pull away with the attack, too.
When I was younger, I used to have nightmares all the time, and my dad told me to say, God stands before me, Satan fall behind, and that actually worked for me at one point when I was at my granny's house, and I'm sleeping in the bedroom that used to be my mom's bedroom, and I had this really crazy dream that my bed was tilting up, like the head of the bed was going up in the air, and I'm sliding down the sheets, and the only thing that's keeping me from falling in this hole that's at the end of my bed, and this hole, there's like fire, and you can smell the sulfur, so on and so forth, and so I put my thumbs underneath the baseboard of the bed, trying not to fall in this hole, and then I wake up, and I'm at the end of the bed, and I'm like, wow, that was a really crazy dream. It felt like so real, and then all of a sudden I smell smoke, and my grandparents rolled their own cigarettes, and they smoked velvet tobacco. And I was like, okay, that's not the tobacco that they smoke. It smelled like cherry cigar smoke. And I look over into my doorway, and I don't have a door. There's these lace curtains that are tied back. And I see this dark figure in the door, and all of a sudden, he raises the cigar up to his mouth, and he takes a puff off of it. And at that point, I see his face in the top portion of, like, his collar and chest area. And this man was the most gorgeous man I had ever laid eyes upon, and he's wearing this tuxedo, and I knew right away who it was. I'm getting chills right now talking about it. I knew it was the devil, and I didn't even say it out loud. In my head, I said, God stands before me, Satan fall behind, and just like that, I was out like a light. Later on, as, you know, I'm back with my dad, and my siblings are visiting. They had a different dad than I did. My 3 older siblings had a different dad. Me and my younger brother had the same dad, but we all get together and we're sharing all the paranormal stories and stuff like we used to back in the day. And I told a story, and my dad turned like 3 shades of white and said, oh my God, your mom told me the same exact story, but he said that this man, the devil, was right next to her bed, and they actually carried on a lengthy conversation. And my sister said when my mom got into her car accident and my sister was in the car with her, that right there on that bend where the car accident happened, there was a black limousine and a man in a tuxedo standing next to it smoking a cigar. And she said she knew that was the devil too. So it's pretty interesting. Have you heard of people experiencing stuff like that?
I have. You know, those you know, that's actually, it's not, I hate to say it's common, but people do have these experiences. And it's almost, you can come into different things too. If you fall into like the Alegba, Bear and Yosemite stuff, the spirits at the crossroads and different things like that. And, you know, when you have these sightings of the type of devil, it depends on your culture, how you interpret them and how you see them. A lot of times, you know, they might have the top hat, you know, the cigar smoke comes into play. They a lot of times can have a cane, and a lot of times they're accompanied too by the hellhounds as well. And, you know, a lot of people have these sightings and believe in those. You know, my grandmother would believe in this, seeing these type of entities and so on. And that's what we would call, that's what I was saying earlier about these haints. We would call them like haints or so on, but that's basically what they are. It's kind of like the type of devil or watcher that would show up when basically like the devil. It's like old Scratch coming to see you, as we would call it.
Yeah, and my husband was like, the devil's not going to do that. Like, he sends his little minions and blah, blah, blah to do this. But in my thought process, I'm thinking he's looking for brides, and that's why he appeared to my mother and appeared to me. And my sister was actually sexually assaulted by what she said was the devil. But she said when it had attacked her, when she felt its skin, she said it had scales on it, and she kind of dug her thumb up and underneath one of its scales, and it finally got off of her and flashed into the wall, and it kind of left a crack in the wall with a little burn mark where it had sparked into there. Well, that was really, really weird. And she didn't have any experiences like that for a long time until she recently moved back into her house, and she started having sleep paralysis and feeling this thing on top of her. And so when I went out there in October, I cleansed her house and stuff, and it was crazy. The night before I got on the plane to come back home, me and my sister went to bed early because 3 times, you know, due to a storm, I missed my flight. I lost my driver's license in New Orleans, of all places, so I had issues with that. So it took me 3 times trying to get on a flight to get away. But this one particular night, I go to sleep, and my husband, I guess, called And I don't remember all of it, but I do remember him saying, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Nothing, I'm just trying to get over this cold and I'm really tired. I need to go back to sleep." But when I look at my call log, the call actually lasted for a little over 10 minutes. And he said during this call, it sounded like I was having sex. But he couldn't hear any other noise in the background. But he, heard the moaning and different sounds. And I was like, that's weird because, my clothes were still on. My blanket was fine. Like, I don't think anything like that happened. But he said what he heard was that. But it's funny, when I woke up, my phone was on the side of my head, and it was really odd. I don't remember any of that happening, but I do think that the entity that had been attacking my sister had attacked me. I'm just glad that I don't remember it. I don't recollect it.
Yeah. That's those stories are horrifying, but I've had cases like that, and that's it's almost like a generational thing, and you have to fight that, and that's something that you just have to be aware of, and those things are horrifying.
Yeah, and you hear about succubus and incubus and such, and
yeah.
The only time that I do recall having an experience like that was down in Farmington, New Mexico, and my husband's in a band, and we were staying in the band house, which is just basically this old brick building, only a window or two in the whole thing, and the room we're staying in had no windows, and all you could see was the light coming out from underneath the door from the living room where there was a window. And my husband goes to sleep first, and I'm just drifting off, and all of a sudden I sense a presence, and I open my eyes and look up, and there's this dark figure standing next to me, and I can't move, I can't scream, I can't say anything, and it's communicating with me telepathically, and it's telling me it's going to take me. And I was like, "No, you're not." And it laughed. And when it laughed, you could see its teeth were like they were glowing, sharp, shiny teeth. And then it leaned down and it kissed me. And when it did, it sent a shock through my canine teeth and throughout my body. And at that point, my feet were free, but the rest of me was still frozen. So I started just frantically kicking my feet and trying to wake my husband up. And he wakes up and he looks over and he sees this dark entity, so he grabs me and pulls me towards him, and all of a sudden it disappears. So I don't know if that was like some sort of incubus or some sort of alien thing. Have you ever heard of a shadow type figure with sharp teeth attacking people?
You know what? There's shadow people attacks people all the time, especially at night. It's almost, you get to the old hag syndrome, different things like that. Where that goes back as far back as in time, different sightings and so on. And you know what? My wives in the past has talked about waking up at the night and having shadow figures standing next to me at night. That's almost a common occurrence. And even now, I can hear stories and stuff like in our homes, the people at night when the boys sleep and seeing a shadow figure walk down our hall. I think these things come visit us, and these things can attack us at night, especially these alien type entities and dimensional type beings. They attack us and they feed off our energy. And I think that it happens more times than not. Definitely.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it wasn't at night, it was during the day. We were just laying down for a nap so we'd, be rejuvenated for the evening and them playing at the bar. But it freaked me out so bad when I left the next day to go to work, and I had to drive about an hour to get to work. I kept looking in my rearview mirror to see if something was in my back seat, or, I felt like this thing was going to follow me, but then I didn't never see it again. And, people say, studies that sleep paralysis is normal. It's just you wake up before your body does, and so on and so forth. But I only had that happen to me twice in my life, so I don't think that is... I don't know. I guess it could be in some sense, but twice in your whole life, I don't think that's I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I think sometimes and I think that people can give you explanation and everything else, but your soul tells you, and you know what was real and what you really experienced. And I think that's important to acknowledge and accept what you experienced. And that helps you try to understand it, and that actually enables you to kind of combat it as well.
So we were talking about thought forms earlier, and you said you got to go to the Stanley Hotel or motel, and it was quite interesting. And there's the whole Shining that was filmed there, and not really any stories about the twins or whatever, but in this certain picture, there's a group of people and they're going through the paranormal tour, and you see this blur of two girls like running up the stairs. Even though two girls didn't pass away there, they're wondering what it was. Perhaps it was a thought form because so many people have seen the movie and thought this place is haunted by these two. Did you guys have any experiences as far as hauntings and things going on at the hotel when you were there?
You know what? I was there to. I think I stayed like. I think we stayed like 3 nights there, and it was there for an event. And the only experience I actually had was down, and I guess in the concert hall, with the door actually opening and closing downstairs from the concert hall. That's the only experience I had. But regards to like the residual energy in the field there, I know a lot of people had personal experiences and everything else. But if you have people come there and they experience that if you keep going to the same thing, like if you tell somebody that this is Crybaby Bridge and the kids go to this bridge over and over and put the money and put the candy on the thing and call for the kids to cry, call for somebody, and you do it over and over and over, that energy charges it, and next thing you know, these things starts to happen. That activity starts to happen. And I think that's kind of what happens in regards to the little girls there at the Stanley and so on. I think that the Stanley was a really beautiful hotel. It was really cool, but the only experience I had was that door opening and closing down in the basement of the concert hall.
That's interesting. And you also said you got to go to Waverly. Did you guys have any mind-blowing experiences there? Like, that's on my bucket list. I want to go.
You know what? Waverly was really cool. I did see some shadow figures moving about and so on. But what the really cool experience I had was that, they call it the death tunnel, whatever. It was raining that night, so we wasn't able to do the tunnel during the investigation. The following day, we went back to it and went down the tunnel and everything. And my case manager was Marty, and we was down. We walked all the way down the end of the tunnel, and I thought Marty was behind me. So I started making my way up, and I look back and I see Marty coming right behind me in the tunnel. So I go on up a little ways, and I make my way up to the top of the tunnel. I look back and I tell Marty to come on. And I call her name because she starts to lag behind. When I call her name, she says, "What?" And she was in front of me. And I look back and Marty was gone. So actually I saw my case manager behind me. She was following me up the tunnel, but all along she was already at the top of the tunnel. It wasn't her. And that wasn't ghostly or anything. I've never experienced anything like that my entire time. But I saw her behind me. It was her following me behind me. She had the exact same clothes. It was her. And when I called her name, she was already up the hill in front of me. And I looked back and she was gone.
That's crazy. Almost like a doppelganger or some entity taking her form.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Exactly.
Have you had any experiences with doppelgangers other than that particular experience?
I had. That was my only time. I've heard stories and spoke to some people that had experiences and so on, but that's the only time that ever happened. And it just kind of creeped me out because, it wasn't ghostly. I didn't get a vibe from it. It wasn't an energy field. It was just like, it was Marty, exact same clothes, everything else, right behind me coming up the thing. But she was already up the hill waiting. And that's something that kind of blows my mind to this day as I think back to it.
Yeah, super crazy.
Yeah.
So we have about 12 minutes left in the show. Are there any other major experiences that you've had paranormally that you'd like to share with us?
I tell you, we did a investigation at the old Northport. It's in Northport, Alabama. It's the Jasper Center. It's a mental hospital, and it was originally like a plantation in the 1860s, and then they turned it into an African American mental hospital from that point on. After that, and then there was a nursing home on the same facility, and it's since kind of closed down. And we had a chance to kind of go investigate it, and you're really not supposed to investigate it, but we got the approval to a brother and all that, so on. So we had a chance to go in with the police kind of watching us. We did the investigation, and we was up on the 3rd floor, and as we was making our way through the old mental hospital, my friend James was behind me with a video camera, and Hunt was on the other side, and we literally, it was a man that was in the next hallway. It was a dark shadow figure of the man. As I stepped through the doorway, he actually hits me. You can hear him hit me on camera. I think we got it on video on one of our one of our pages. He hits me, and then he runs, and it's like a physical form where he runs to the old where the fire escape was. You can hear him hit the fire escape, then he's gone. And then when we went down there was nobody there. The fire escape wasn't there anymore. It was just the first step of the fire escape, and it was a full-fledged shadow figure. It was not ghostly. And to this day, we all kind of question was it a real man or not, but that's something that occurred that I've never been able to explain. And once it hit me, it's almost like where psychically and stuff like that, it was like I couldn't get my bearings back again. I was like this discombobulated spiritually with things just shuffled. And that's the only time that's ever happened, and that's something that kind of stands out. I don't always talk about, but I know I've got an interview of that posted somewhere where that happened.
So, we haven't talked about it yet, but you do have a book out that was just released. Can you tell our listeners about that and how they can find your book?
Sure. We got a book, Life Among Spirits. It's on Amazon. What it does is it actually covers some of my other books, Chronicles of the Supernaturalist, Roads We Travel, and then Haunted Montgomery. We kind of put all the books together for Life Among Spirits, added some new stories, and it covers from when we was kids up to some of our times of investigators. It kind of leads to point to where we are now. And then I've got a new book coming out we're finishing up. My friend Beth Ann and Sammy and them helping us complete this book. This book should be done hopefully sometime this month, and it's going to pick up with this where Life Among Spirits left off. So I'm really excited about that. So we got a lot of little projects out there.
So did you ever think as a kid that you'd be writing books?
You know what? I always kind of wanted to. That's something I always wanted to do. Even when I started in this field, I think I wanted to be. I never really wanted to be. I never really wanted to be famous or anything like that. I wanted to be able to kind of leave some type of legacy and really want to research. I've always loved people like Brad Steiger, John Keel, all of them. And I just want to be. I just want to kind of be that type of investigator when I'm an old man. I want that type of person, be that type of person that my kids can look up to and see the work I've done in some of my books and kind of leave that legacy that they can pick up and go from there.
Yeah, Jen's teasing me over in Periscope. She said my accent came out when I said books. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I worked really hard to get rid of my accent after I moved from Arkansas to Florida. I caught a lot of flack for my accent, so I worked really hard on getting rid of it, but I've had people tell me that I have an accent here in Colorado, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize it. But I guess people in Colorado do have a certain sort of accent. It's pretty interesting, but yeah, and it's crazy. Like, there's so many different paranormal activities going on in different regions of the world, not only the United States. And Hat Man is one of those. And my son actually saw Hat Man right outside of my studio door, and he's waiting for his dad to come to bed with him, and I was working overnight security, and he told me about that. And at that same time, my daughter had a place in Ignacio, which used to be a Catholic church back in the 1940s. Now it's a home. But she started seeing him in a little, what I would call a minion, like somebody under his control, who she said looked very fearful, and he'd always hide behind things. And she felt like he didn't want to do what the Hat Man wanted him to do, but this thing was attacking her, and she felt like she was going crazy because she's the only one experiencing it. Her boyfriend's giving her flack for it and saying, she's losing her mind, but then all of a sudden him and his friends started experiencing it too. And my husband's saying Hat Man can't be in two different places at one time, but I've heard that he can be in many different places at once.
Absolutely. I think he's many different forms. I think sometimes he's just a form of a watcher. And I think that's how a lot of us can see him, is like Hat Man. And I think there's just different Hat Men out there, and he's kind of like our own personal watcher for different people. We all have our different experiences, and I think he can be seen many other places. I think there's many entities, types of Hat Men out there.
Yeah, it's very intriguing, and I do believe that, there's omnipresence where a certain entity can be in many places, and this certain entity seems to me like he's very, very powerful, and he's looking, like a lot of people say, for the ruin of souls. He's trying to take souls, and he had one in league with him at that certain point. what exactly do you think the Hat Man is? Do you think he is some sort of dark entity, or do you think he is another thought form?
No, I actually think the Hat Man is almost a form of some type of fallen angel. He's a watcher. And I think that he watches people that's sensitive, that people is kind of open to that spiritual realm, that has certain abilities. And I think they come to you very young, and he watches you from a distance. And I think at certain points in your life, they show up and they're a lot closer tonight. Sometimes it's when you're at a low point in your life, when you're depressed, sad, or some things, or at certain crossroads, you have to make decisions. I think sometimes he's drawn closer to you and you can see him. And I really think that's kind of what he is. That's what he is to me. And I think maybe somebody else might have different opinions, but that's what's the cool thing about this field. There's no such thing as experts. But that's just my opinion on that. That's what I believe it is.
It's very interesting. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to bring up? We have T-minus 5 minutes and counting before the end of the show.
No, I really appreciate you having me on tonight, and I am so sorry I've been sick and not on top of my game tonight. If you have me on again, I'll do a better job. I feel like I've dragged and been all over the place, but I really appreciate you having me on the show tonight.
Well, I think you've done really well, and Jen was saying over here in Periscope, she thought you were doing a really awesome job, and she loves your southern accent. She's from Tennessee, so she's got an accent as well, but yeah, she was really digging everything you're saying and your accent, and she said you're on point, you're doing a great job, so don't let that whole flu get you down. You're doing awesome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But anytime you want me back on again, just let me know, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and anybody you want to send our way to share their stories, feel free to do that. So where can our listeners find you and contact you?
Sure. You can find us on Facebook at Midnight in the Crossroads Radio. Got my Facebook page. My author page is Shawn Sellers. Just like us, send the messages. And we do a Thursday night radio show. I don't do a good job on our links and stuff, but you can all find it on our Facebook pages. We do a show every Thursday night from 9 until 10 o'clock Central Time.
Nice. And where is that again?
It's on, I don't know the show. I know it's on, I know you, oh my goodness. I know it's horrible. You can find it on our Facebook page, Midnight in the Crossroads. You can find our links. But I don't know the exact. I know it's on iHeartRadio, but I know I don't do a good job with that stuff. I'm so sorry. But you can find it on Down at the Crossroads Radio and our links for our Thursday night show.
And your Facebook page is under Southern Paranormal Researchers?
Yes, Southern Paranormal Researchers. Also, you got, you can go to, I've got several pages out there, probably Midnight at the Crossroads Radio, and also Shawn Sellers. You can get us in Montgomery, Haunted Montgomery Tours as well.
Yeah, and Jen was typing in the chat room, Shawn Sellers, but she was spelling it wrong. It's S-H-A-W-N, Sellers.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Yes, S-H-A-W-N.
Well, it's been awesome hanging out with you, and I would love to have you back sometime. And if you'd like to bring your team members in, that'd be awesome as well. But thank you so much for pulling through. I know you got the flu going on, kind of like a gift from the new year to you. But I'm so glad exactly. It's going away and time for you to go to work, because, man, that's hard when you're trying to live life and, pay these bills and the man's getting you down. I'm glad you're not missing any work due to that.
That's right. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Thanks for having me on, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much again, Shawn, for coming on. It's been awesome hearing your stories, and I would love to have you back again and to hear more about what you do out there. And thank you so much for being there for people out there in your region. And you do travel, right? You go to different places, not only in your state, but in other states, correct?
Yeah, we travel. Yes, ma'am. We travel all over. We'll go anywhere, definitely. I'm always down for a road trip, anytime.
Heck yeah, if you guys ever get out to the Four Corners area, definitely hit me up, and I'll show you some of the places around here that we love to investigate.
All right, that's a deal. We'll have to make that happen sometime. Thank you so much. Have a good night now. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again for being my guest tonight, Shawn. It's been amazing.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Good night. And thank you. Ooh, hold on 1 second. Totally blasted my eardrums out. Thank you to all of our friends on We Are Paradox Media's Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Periscope, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and I can't wait to do it again next weekend when we have Keith Ottersberg on Saturday night, and we have Richard Case, the ghost hunter, or the ghost challenger from the UK. Don't forget, we're all in this together. Together we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. And if you'd like to join us on the Skype after party, look me up and send me a contact request at live.tessa.n.thomas30, or give us a jingle at 1-970-335-9596. Remember, this is an 18 and over after party. We don't want to corrupt any younger minds. But until next time, guys, nighty night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Don't work too hard this week, and I will see you back here, same time, same place. Take care, my yous.